Is the applicant present, and do they wish to add anything to the planner's comments? Please step forward. You'll have to turn on the microphone there with a little button, and identify yourself, please, with your name and address.
I am Andrew Sherman of 87 Corrievale Road.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just, I guess, from all the information I've got put together from Doug Dare from the Corrievale Road Association, as well as Terry Lee. I guess they've had a disagreement over about 40 years of who actually owned that stretch of the road. But as you can see, I don't know if it even shows on that map if there's a more accurate depiction of where the Baxter Road Association used to own a portion at the bottom corner of the property there, basically where it ends. And it goes up into the corner of, I believe, the corner of like where it yields off to Lakeview Road. So as far as I'm concerned, it was just kind of a miscommunication over the last 40 plus years going back to the Baxter Road Association. So it's big headache. I can understand for some people, but as far as I'm concerned, there's another driveway across the road as me as well. First name's Jerry, but he's got two driveways literally going across the road from where my proposed driveways were as well. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Madam Secretary, was there any correspondence in this application?
One letter was received from Hydro One stating they have no comments or concerns at this time, and one letter was received from the District of Muskoka stating they have no objection in principle to the application as currently proposed, and one letter of no objection was received from Cope Smith.
Thank you very much. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address this application?
Through you,
Yes,
Mr. Chair, there is someone here representing the applicant on Zoom.
okay. I have a gentleman present who raised his hand. Did you wish to comment, sir? If you do, please come forward. Turn on the mic, identify yourself.
Yes, good morning. My name's Terry Lee, 223 Lakeview Drive. If my wife and I are the only ones doing maintenance on this road, and especially in the wintertime, we're out there at 68 years old, at least once a week, maybe twice a week, maintaining this road. How am I going to keep up this maintenance if we have to do this every day when it is a township road that my wife and I are maintaining?
Okay. Ms. McCabe, I understand you had addressed that with the building department or the engineering department?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. What Mr. Lee is discussing here really isn't a committee of adjustment issue. This is something that needs to be brought forward to council to discuss, and how council's going to, if they are in support of moving forward with taking over the maintenance of this road, as it is a municipally owned road. But this has no bearing on this committee of adjustment application.
Okay, thank you. So as you'll see, apparently there's someone else with the Township of Georgian Bay that will be addressing that issue with you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we had someone, member of the public online that had a question. Yeah, go ahead. Is that Victoria?
It is. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of committee. My name is Victoria Lemieux from Morgan Planning. Our address for the record is 98 Tecumseh Street in Orillia, Ontario. I'm just here on behalf of the owner, Andrew, who provided some initial comments there. So thank you for that, Andrew. Just wanted to advise committee if anyone has any questions or anything like that. I do have a slideshow prepared. Deb did a great job of providing an overview of the application. So I'll just be here for any questions that you might have, but just wanted to also reiterate to the committee that the owner, Andrew, has also expressed to the road associations that, you know, however this may land of, you know, issues that might arise with the road associations and the municipality, either way, if contributions to the road association to, you know, add funds to the maintenance, essentially, you know, petty fund for what they use for that, and becoming members of that is, if that's preferred, no problem. But regardless, just wanted to reiterate to the committee, as Ms. McCabe mentioned, there is a condition that's been added to this approval to ensure that if there is any agreements that need to be put in place, that staff have the ability to do so. So we all feel confident coming forward to the committee today and appreciate your time. So here for any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Victoria. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address this application? We have none present or none online. So with that, I will close the public session of this application and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or comments. And I would ask the committee, is there any questions or comments that you have on this application? Okay. Member Rivet.
Apologies. Just remind me again what the minimum frontage has been reduced to and what the minimum cover lot size has been reduced to.
So Chair, I can answer that question for Member Rivet. So the minimum lot area that was approved by council is 1 hectare, and the minimum lot frontage was 75 meters. So all of these lots meet those minimums.
What, yeah, but I just want to know what is the lot frontage and what has it been reduced to? What's the minimum lot frontage requirement? What has it been reduced to? I know what's been approved. I just want to know what the provision requires. It says the frontage and the minimum lot area requirements have been reduced specifically. So it's what is required and what has it been reduced
Okay.
to?
Do you have that information, Victoria?
I do. So Member Rivet, so the rural zone, prior to us submitting the zoning bylaw amendment, I believe the lot frontage, and Ms. McCabe can jump in if I'm correct. Pulling it up my binder right now.
I can confirm, Mr. Chair, it's 150 meters, the minimum.
And do you have the final dimension of the lot once it's severed?
Yes, through you, Chair. So the 2 severed lots are over 1 hectare in area and over 75 meters in frontage. I can provide it on the screen, Member Rivet, if you would prefer to see the measurements on the screen.
Just the number would be fine, Victoria, if you have it there.
Sorry, I thought I heard Deb jumping in, but I didn't want to disturb her.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So the retained lot, Member Rivet, so the retained lot will maintain a lot area of 1 hectare and a minimum lot frontage of, I believe it's, see here, it's right in front of my screen, 189 meters. So that'll be the retained lot where Mr. Sherman will retain his residence. The middle lot will have a total lot area of 1.24 hectares and a total lot frontage of 79.2 meters, and that's survey confirmed at this point. And the lot to the north, the most northerly lot, will have a lot area of 1.04 hectares and a lot frontage of 86 meters based on the survey. Thank you.
And to you, Mr. Chair. And is the road a class A, a class B, or another road? I'm just trying, because it's quite a significant difference. It's 150. It's either 150 is required on a class A road versus 75. So that's significant difference in lot width, correct?
Mhm.
So through you, Chair, that is correct. So our application to council, when we went and asked for a reduction in the lot area, so this would have been considered an other road because it's not under district rule, I guess you can say. The class A and class B are for district roads. So our original application sought to reduce the 120 meters down to the minimum of 75. But again, the lot frontages do vary, but we did get council approval for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so council approval is in place. And we were just approving the severance itself. All right, are there any other questions from the public or the council? Seeing none, I will read the resolution. I have 2 resolutions which are basically the same, so I'll read them as one. for B 23 and B 29, moved by member Schmidt, seconded by member Matthews. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby grants provisional approval to consent application B 23-29 and B 23-30 for the severance of Lot A and B as shown on Schedule A attached to this decision and subject to the following conditions. One, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. Two, that this decision applies only to the lot as indicated in Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. The lot shall substantially conform to Schedule A. And three, that a reference plan, a survey that is registered be completed and a digital copy and a hard copy be filed with the Township Planning Department or an exemption from the reference plan be received from the registrar. Four, that pursuant to section 53, subsection 42 of the Planning Act, that the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of giving of the notice of decision. Notice note that section 53, subsection 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction be approved by this consent. Must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate. And five, that the clerk of the township provide written confirmation that an official plan amendment and a zoning plan amendment are in force and effect to designate and rezone portions of the subject lands to recognize the recommendations and environmental impact study prepared by Berks National Heritage Consultants dated March 2023 as amended. And six, that the owner pay 5% in lieu of parkland dedication for the severed lands in accordance with section 51, subsection 1 of the Planning Act and the Township of Georgian Bay bylaw number 88-74. The township shall retain an appraiser at the owner's expense to prepare the appraisal. Seven, that the owner enter an agreement with the township if deemed necessary by the Township Planning Department in accordance with section 51, subsection 26 of the Planning Act to implement the recommendations of the environmental impact study prepared by Berks National Heritage Consultants dated March 2023 as amended, the peer review and the peer review response, and also that the owner enter into an agreement with the township if deemed necessary by the township's planning department in accordance with section 51, subsection 26 of the Planning Act relating to the portion of the municipal road known as Corrievale Road that abuts the two new lots and any upgrades that are deemed necessary by the Director of Operations for the Township of Georgian Bay. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved. Applications. Thank you. Our next application this morning, a little change in the order, will be A23-40 for 413 Crooked Bay Road. To the planner, please.
Through the chair. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of a detached garage in the rear yard, having a deck and a staircase with associated landing, providing access from the exterior of the building to the second story. The subject property has an irregular shape with an area of approximately 3,075 square meters and a frontage of 43 meters onto 6 Mile Lake. The lands are designated waterfront within the District of Muskoka and Township of Georgian Bay official plans and are zoned 6 Mile Lake Residential Exception 13 and partially zoned Crown land. The lands are developed with a detached dwelling and 3 accessory buildings. The largest of the accessory buildings will be removed and the number of buildings and accessory buildings on the property will remain the same. The existing detached dwelling does not have a garage. The detached garage will have an increased ground floor area, height, and reduced side yard setback. The lot coverage will be increased from 9.2% to 13.72%. Due to the unique shape of the property, a 0-meter setback from the nearest lot line to the driveway is also being proposed. The deck, staircase, and associated landing, providing access to the second story, project into a minimum required side yard, whereas projection is only permitted in a required front yard. The
proposed driveway and parking area in front of the garage will have a permeable surface, being crushed granite rock. A dwelling unit and sleeping area are not permitted in the garage, and it will not be visible from 6 Mile Lake or Crooked Bay Road. The applicant has advised that their intention is to keep as many trees as possible and to plant additional trees upon construction. Thank you.
Application.
2 letters of support were received from David Thompson, J. Zhao, and Joe DeSalva.
Thank you. Is the applicant present either in person or online? And do they wish to add to the comments made by the planner? Okay, do you see somebody online? Just checking. Okay. We don't see the applicant present. Is there any member of the public that wishes to? Oh, I'm sorry, we are seeing someone now. Okay, could you please identify yourself?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Diana Fiore of Vula and Associates, acting agent for this application in question. For the record, we're located at 1 County Road 6 South in Tiny. I don't have anything much more to add from what's been indicated in the planning report and on the minor variance applications, but I'm here to answer any questions of the committee members or public. The owner of this property is supposed to be joining us this morning in person in council chambers. I'm not sure if he is there at the moment, but he will be there to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We don't see the person present, so if there are no further questions from the public, I would close the public session of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we'll begin with Member Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I'm not too upset over the fact that we're looking at a 50% increase in lot coverage with this proposal, I am concerned that the design of the garage implies, if you're just looking at it, that there will be living quarters above. I don't see any reason why you'd want to have a balcony on a building like this unless you were going to have some sort of living accommodation up there. There is obviously in the report no indication, or there is indication that there is no plans for anything such as that. But I can't believe that when you look at that design, that somebody isn't possibly looking down the road, unintended, at the possibility of inhabiting this property above the garage. Is there any way we can stipulate within the approval that we put forth that there will be no living accommodation at all in this addition?
I think we could speak to the building department about that. I'm sorry, we have a response here.
Through the chair, the official plan actually does not allow for dwelling units in the upper story of a detached garage in this area. You need to have frontage onto a public road and things like that. In this case, the property does not. It's a private road. So it would not be permitted as of right. They would need some type of planning act approval to even be able to establish that use.
Right, but we're not gonna have somebody on bylaw go by and check to make sure this is not being used inappropriately in 2 years' time. That's not the way we think things work. It has to be a complaint from the public that this place is being used inappropriately before somebody goes and has a look at it. And I think you got to agree with me, when you look at that design, it looks like there's going to be living accommodation up there one way or the other. Yes, I understand that the bylaws indicate that it can't be done. Doesn't mean it won't be done. And is there any way we can control the fact that somebody down the road will do it? I mean, like I said, bylaw will not go by unless the specific, there's a specific complaint with regards to something like this. But we don't, there's nothing, I mean, you'll agree with me, there's nothing we can do like voluntarily, just go down and look at it every 2 years to see that nothing's happening. That wouldn't happen. So how can we stipulate within this agreement that nothing will happen here? I don't think, I guess my question is almost rhetorical. I don't think we can.
I think based on what the planners wanted, you know, the official plan doesn't allow for that. So, you know, if the owner decides to
Yes.
put sleeping accommodations there, they're in contravention to the.
Yes, so we're relying on the goodwill of the owners of the property and future owners who may or may not know what the circumstances are of that piece of property. Anyway, that's no review on my part. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from committee? Oh, Member Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. My question, I guess it's a combination to the planning and building department. With a 0 side setback for a driveway, would it be beneficial to have some sort of agreement with the next door neighbor to, I mean, I know it's on their property, it's not on their, butting on their neighbor's property, but try to establish some sort of, you know, understanding. I mean, this is right on the property line and vehicles will be traveling right along it. Are there any concerns about spillage of gravel or spillage, you know, traffic interfering with the neighboring property?
Through your chair, the building department has no regulatory authority over driveways. So there could be nothing from our end of the situation.
We have a comment from Member Schmidt.
I myself am quite familiar with this property. I'm literally in the backside bay around the corner from this family. The next door neighbor property is actually the applicant's sister. So I think they're good neighbors. Their access comes right across. Familiar with where this building is going to be situated. It is definitely going to be literally invisible from the water and or any of the roadways. And the neighbor directly behind Dave, the letter of support. And I've known the family for quite some time, and I would certainly hope if their application says they don't plan on using it for living space, then we have to trust that, I believe, on face value.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's fine.
Yeah, I understand your question, and just to clarify that, maybe to the building department again, you know, if the township or the building department would approve a building permit for construction with a 0 setback, is that common, or is that happen, or how do you do that?
It's the driveway that has the 0 setback, not the building.
Okay, then that's fine. All right, but it wouldn't be a dwelling with 0 setback. All right, thank you. If there are no further questions, I will read the resolution. Moved by Member Jarvis, seconded by Member Predko. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application A23-40 for the construction of a detached garage and subject to the following conditions: that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. That this decision applies only to the detached garage as indicated in Schedule A, attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. That this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Our next application is A22-15 for 862 Haskett's Drive. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The application for a minor variance was originally received by the township in June 2022. The first hearing on this application was September 16th, 2022, with the decision being deferred at the time. Morgan Planning and Development submitted concerns on behalf of the owners of 856 Haskets Drive and had requested them to be considered at the time. The owner himself has retained MHBC Planning to assist with the variance process and resubmitted an amended application justifying the relocation of the proposed sleeping cabin from the previous submission, as well as the proposed screening that will be incorporated into the development. The issue raised regarding the location of the proposed sleeping cabin in relation to the location of the hydro line has been rectified and is satisfactory now to the chief building official. The owner relocated the proposed sleeping cabin based on comments received as well as the requirements under the Ontario Building Code relating to the location of the hydro. Further comments were received in May 2023 from Morgan Planning as a result of recirculation for the June 9th, 2023 hearing, indicating that the merits of the application should be reviewed and considered based on the requirements of the zoning bylaw and not only by the existing conditions of the property as it pertains to an increase in built form. Consideration should be given to receiving comments from the fire department. Concerns have been raised with the new location of the proposed sleeping cabin as it will clearly be adjacent to the clearly be visible to the adjacent property and is still to be constructed directly beside and elevated above a number of bedroom and bathroom windows on the neighboring property. The owner is requesting an increase in the maximum lot coverage permitted within 60 meters of the high water mark, an increase in the maximum lot coverage for all buildings and structures, and also a reduction in the minimum interior side yard setback. At the June 9th, 2023 Committee of Adjustment hearing, the application was deferred as requested by the applicant. This was due to a discrepancy in the lot coverage calculation and also the size of existing tent structure on the property. Confirmation has now been provided by the applicant of the lot, of the lot coverage percentages being requested, and an additional circulation of the notice of hearing has taken place.
Okay, thank you very much. Has there been any correspondence on this application?
2 letters of no objection were received from David and Beryl Remenson and Richard Schur. 2 letters of objection were received from Christopher Huddart and Morgan Planning and Development on behalf of Rob and Tracy Stewart, owners of 856 Haskets Drive, and 3 letters of support were received from Susan and David Doug Stokes, Robert and Susan Smith, and Heather Linka.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant present and do they wish to address? Is the applicant online?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Santoro, is there anything that you wish to add to the comments of the planner?
Thank you, Chair Hill and members of COA. I'm not going to make any comments with respect to the Ontario Planning Act and the requirements of the 4 tests as the professional planners will step forward and do this. I would like to briefly focus your attention on something a little different. Earlier this year, when Mr. Smith joined the township planning team as leader, he started strongly promoting the idea of giving back something, preferably to the environment, when a request is made for a minor variance. Respectfully, I feel I have done this. My application identifies I am requesting an additional 44.5 square meters of lot coverage for a proposed sleep cabin. What may not be clear is my application also identifies I am removing 2 existing structures that have been on my property for over 2 decades, that together total 20 square meters. Thus, the net addition of lot coverage being requested is effectively 24.5 square meters and not the 44.5 that is quite evident. In addition, I have also committed to add native foliage to camouflage the view of my sleep cabin from my neighbor's property. And that's all I wish to say today at this point, and I'm open for questions, and
I thank you for allowing me to speak, and I have an agent who will probably speak for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Santoro. I see your agent is present as well. Is there anything that you wish to add to the planner's comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. I have a short presentation if you allow me to present, just with a few high-level comments as well as some photos that will help illustrate the application.
Okay. Have you arranged to share your screen?
I have the ability to share. It should be
Okay.
sharing now, if you can see it. Are you able to see the presentation, Mr. Chair?
Yes, we see your cover page.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Graham Richards with MHBC Planning, acting on behalf of Mr. Santoro for the minor variance application for 862 Haskets Drive. So just a short presentation, we'd like to highlight some key points that we agree with the staff report and its recommendation. As Deb McCabe mentioned, it was previously deferred due to some inaccuracies in measurements that have since been rectified, but it does not change our planning opinion. Overall, the application is providing a modestly sized sleeping cabin with appropriate setbacks from the shoreline, and the site is well vegetated. And one of the conditions of approval or provisional approval was a landscaping plan to increase the vegetation cover. And I'll show some pictures shortly that illustrates this. Overall, the lot coverage is minor, and as Vince Santoro mentioned, there are going to be some structures removed as part of the application. So as you're well aware of the four tests of minor variance, the application maintains the character and intent of the shoreline as per your official plan and zoning bylaw. We can see on the right, we have a few photos that show Mr. Santoro's property with the location of the sleeping cabin highlighted in that red square. So you can see there's quite a heavy amount of vegetation, and the sleeping cabin does not result in the overdevelopment of the lot because most of it will be covered by vegetation. There is going to be appropriate screening from both the shoreline and to the neighbor's property, with more to be added as part of that landscaping plan that's a condition. And we don't see the application as having any impacts on the environment or the enjoyment of the neighbor's property or any of the shoreline users, as the activity areas of the two properties are oriented in a different direction. The last slide here, I'd just like to highlight the location of the sleeping cabin. You can see the view of the shoreline, the amount of vegetation, as well as the bottom picture is the view of the neighboring property with the existing vegetation, and the vegetation is going to be increased as part of that landscaping plan. So we can see there's quite a bit of screening that will only increase as the application goes forward. But that ends my short presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you or the committee may have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Richards. I just want to point out that your audio is a little garbled there. If you have a microphone, perhaps it might be adjusted. I'm sure there'll be questions going forward. Is there any member of the public that's present and wishes to address this application? Okay. We are bringing over Victoria Lemieux with Morgan Planning. And please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee, and members of the public. My name is Victoria Lemieux from Morgan Planning and Development. I'm here on behalf of the neighboring property owners at 856 Haskets Drive. Just to make some brief comments, Chair, obviously, committee is aware that we have circulated some numerous correspondence that I know, and I appreciate committee members reviewing that ahead of time. But Chair, I would really appreciate if you would allow me to share my screen with just a couple of photos just to reiterate some of the points. But again, I understand that you have a lot on your plate today, and we will be brief given that we have submitted some very detailed comments. Appreciate that.
Please go ahead, Ms. Lemieux.
Thank you. So again, thank you very much, committee, for allowing me to speak on behalf of the property owners. This is just a quick image on your screen, just reiterating the location of, again, the subject property of the application and its close proximity, of course, to our client at 856. So this image here on your screen, committee, and for members of the public who might be watching, is just reiterating essentially the proposed cabin location of the application. It is our opinion in reviewing this application over numerous resubmissions that this proposed structure essentially will be wedged in between the existing dwelling of the subject property, as well as the development on my client's property here to the south. Additionally, for any member of the committee who may have attended the site in advance of this meeting or one of the previous meetings scheduled, you will be aware of the drastic topographical change that does occur from this proposed location down towards southeast of our client's property, towering over their shoreline area and existing development. Approval of this application would result in detrimental effects to my client's peace and enjoyment of their property. This image here, just wanted to reiterate to the committee that I found interesting as part of the application. The existing dwelling of the subject property, as you can see here, is currently orientated to the northeast, which of course makes sense because really the active shoreline area of this property is towards the southeast, where the existing boathouse, the deck, the dock, and I believe there's a small beached area as well exists. So the view of the existing dwelling overlooking their own shoreline is fantastic because they are not imposing on any adjacent properties. However, the proposed location of this sleeping cabin is essentially designed in a way to take advantage of a different view of the lake, which will be looking southeast. And really, at what cost does this come down to? And that cost is resulting in a towering structure looking over top of the entirety of the usable space of my client's property, as well as both interior spaces and, of course, the entirety of their shoreline. Please note also, it is my opinion that the inclusion of this proposed structure further contributes to the overdevelopment of this property. So here, this first image is looking from the rear of my client's sleeping cabin, which is here on the right side of this photo. And this is demonstrating the visibility of the existing dwelling, of course, that has been on site for many years, and is reiterating this is essentially the smallest topographical change along this portion of the property and the south lot line between the two properties. This image here, committee, is probably one of the most important photos that I'm going to show you this morning in objection to this application. This photo was taken on my client's property. So of course, the proposed cabin location is essentially to the left here of your screen on top of this rock area, a bit further left to where this photo is, because of course, we were not, of course, going to go on to the subject property to take this photo. So in light of that, I wish the committee to close their eyes and imagine themselves standing on top of this rock where this proposed cabin is going to be looking. And I would like you to consider looking out to the lake from this location. First of all, looking over top of the lack of filled in mature vegetation. This photo was taken around actually this time last year. So around mid-September, as you can see, the mature vegetation looking towards the lake is already lacking in any type of greenery. Additionally, of course, I'm sure you can imagine standing here, the view that you would have already in this photo, seeing the majority of our client's shoreline, really from standing atop this rock, the entirety of the shoreline into personal windows, as well as all of their decking area would be evident. It's important to note that our clients have resided here since 2003, and this became their home full-time in 2010. So it's important to note, committee, that this is not just a seasonal home that my clients reside in. This is a time of year in this photo that our clients would absolutely still be using their fire pit by the water and sitting out and having dinner with their family and friends on their deck. And we do believe that the committee should be drastically concerned with the lack of privacy that already exists on these between these two properties in this location, as well as the lack of existing vegetation, as mentioned by the applicant. Here is a similar view taken a little further back from where the rear of the sleeping cabin approximately would be located, but again, a little bit to the left on the subject property. Reiterating to committee that the bottom of this cabin would be built on top of the rock. So again, to reiterate the absolute difference in height that this structure would have over my client's property. This would be towering over their roof lines, especially with the reduced setback to the side lot line, creating potential drainage concerns as well, and overall losing lack of sunlight and not allowing for reasonable vegetation to be maintained. This photo here is taken from one of the side windows of our client's sleeping cabin. As you can see here, committee, it is hard to see in this photo, but there are some orange stakes here that is essentially staking out the corners of the proposed sleeping cabin. Important to note that essentially the entirety of this sky and vegetation area that you see in this photo would essentially be no longer for our clients outside of their window if this structure were to be built. Here's another angle, again, showing the topographical difference, getting a little closer to the water. Again, identifying one of the markers of the corner of the building and how the view of this structure from our clients' personal bedrooms and bathrooms would be gravely affected. Again, majority of the skyline that you see in this photo would no longer be. This next photo here is a view from the closest window, or sorry, one of the closer windows towards the water. You can see a little bit more of the proposed building footprint here with the orange markers. And again, the proposed decking area, it's our understanding, would be cantilevered slightly over this rock face. Again, to reiterate to the committee that views from our client's windows would eliminate the majority of this open sky and mature vegetation view. And here I have two photos of the proposed location from inside of their structures, from their windows. Again, reiterating just how close this proposed structure will end up being to the existing development, and them trying to wedge a structure in between the two. And here is that other photo that I mentioned. Again, the red area is the approximate location as to where this structure would be built, and the lack of additional lake view to the north and just general skylight and enjoyment of sunlight into their personal indoor spaces would be lost. And here's a final image that our office put together based on the submission by the applicant. Again, approximate value as to where the structure would be located, doing our best based on proposed heights of the structure, just reiterating to the committee really how large of a structure this will be. And again, given the topographical difference, the impacts that this would have, this grave invasive impact of privacy. Again, to reiterate, this photo is that first photo that I showed you, which provides the least amount of topographical difference from behind their existing sleeping cabin. The topographical difference is even greater from the water, as I showed you in those previous photos. In summary, committee, again, thank you very much for allowing me to share some photos with you today. I just want to reiterate a few points. The subject property is seeking an increase in lot coverage to almost 14%, where 8% is permitted, in order to permit this structure. With this structure, the straight line frontage of the subject property would approximately be covered by 50% by structures, lacking any kind of balance between built form and natural open space, as directed by the township's official plan and zoning bylaw requirements. The subject property is frankly already overdeveloped. This application is attempting to take advantage of our client's property in order to provide another structure for year-round use with additional prime lake views, but at the cost of their privacy and their quality of life. The proposed structure will result in an invasive intrusion on the peace and enjoyment of their home, and lack of privacy of both their indoor and outdoor spaces. The proposed structure and lack of side yard setback will not provide any reasonable space to have any significant vegetative plantings be able to thrive and to grow, and it will create a loss of sunlight and is located again on a sloping rock face. As demonstrated in these photos, no vegetative buffering will minimize the grave impact that the proposed application will have for our client. And this application should not be considered and approved based upon the condition of a vegetative planting requirement due to these facts. I do not believe committee, anyone in this room, virtually or otherwise, including the applicant themselves, would want to be in the position that my clients are in. And I do ask the committee respectfully, in this instance, please hold weight, grave weight, to my client's concerns and advise the applicant that this proposed development in fact does not meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act based on the existing overdevelopment of the property, the grave privacy concerns that it will create for their neighbor, and that it is not minor in nature. Thank you very much for your time to provide comments.
Thank you, Ms. Lemieux. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address this application? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public portion of the application and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or comments. And the first hand up was Member Pretko.
Thank you, and through your chair, just asking a question of the planning department. Could you please let us know what the current lot coverage is? I don't think we've seen what the current is, and I just want to make sure that it is below the 8% that is required by the bylaw.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if you give me 2 minutes, I will find that out for you.
Okay, was there a secondary question, Member Pretko?
There was, and I guess the secondary question is there an opportunity to change the orientation of that bunkie so that it's not in line with the lot line and more in line with the cottage? But that's, I guess, a question for the agent for Mr. Santoro, or for Mr. Santoro.
Okay. Mr. Santoro, would you care to address that question? Did you hear it okay, or need it repeated?
Yeah, yes, I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The orientation, I think the videos that we're taking do not show the view accurately. I can orientate it slightly rotationally to the I guess clockwise, but the view is really into trees. I will not be the Victoria was very accurate in expressing her view. The orientation of my property is to the northeast, even from that cottage, even though the location in that is parallel to the property line. The views and the direction of walkways, pathways, patios will be to the northeast. Why would I want to look towards their property? I mean, yes, I will have a window, just like he currently has windows that look onto my public spaces, outdoor spaces. And yes, if I turn my head, I will be able to look that way, but that's not the direction. And another critical point I would say is the vegetation is quite dense. I'm a snowbird. The property is used extensively in the summertime. The bunkie will not be used in the wintertime. And therefore the foliage along the front of the property will block just about all the view. I'll make one other point that was made in Ms. Lemieux's presentation, her report. She says, I am removing trees in front of the bunkie. There will be no vegetation removed in the front of the bunkie. So all the vegetation is there that currently today blocks primarily the view from their spot will not be touched. And I'll add one last point, if you don't mind, Chair. They do not want to, they want their privacy, and so do I. So the brushes, the bush, the foliage will be intensified significantly to provide both of us with privacy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Santoro. Do we have an answer to the first part of the question?
Yes, I do. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Predko. The overall lot coverage rate at the present time is 10.7%, and they're increasing it by another 1% to 11.7%.
Okay, so they are already above the bylaw
That's
requirement,
correct.
so they're, I guess, non-compliant or legal
Correct.
non-compliant. Okay, thank you.
And I think from a planner standpoint, the increased lot coverage was covered by a previous minor variance.
Not that I'm aware of. Maybe Mr. Graham or Graham can answer that.
Through the
I
chair.
can,
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. May I answer that? All the structures that are on my property were built for, with the exception of the garage, in 1991, under the zoning bylaw 9119. At that time, deck coverage was not include, or decks over 1.2 meters were not included. I have over 80 square meters of deck coverage over 1.2 meters. If that was removed, I would have been under 6%, under 8% today before this application and okay, sorry, thank you.
Through the chair, just the lot coverage requirements of the current zoning bylaw are for any lots.
I'm sorry, Mr. Richards, you're very difficult to understand. I think your microphone is not your friend today.
I don't know. Is that any better? I'm not sure.
Much better, yes.
Okay. All right. I'm just fiddling with the microphone settings. So through you, Mr. Chair, just something to note with the lot coverage requirements is that those are for a new lot. So new lots in the SR6 zone are about 8,000 meters square. Mr. Santoro's lot is about half that size, as it's a pre-existing lot. And so that lot coverage requirement is more geared towards the creation of a new lot with which a much, essentially a size, twice the size. So with such a small undersized lot, as many of the lots on 6 Mile Lake are, the increase in lot coverage is not significant in our opinion.
Did you get that, Member Preco? Okay,
Yes, thank you.
all right. Any other, I'm sorry? We have a hand up online. Yeah, Victoria, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I will be brief. I just wanted to make a couple of follow-up comments. Again, appreciate that. Firstly, to Member Predco's question, I also want to reiterate, Member Predco, that the zoning bylaw also has a requirement for maximum lot coverage within the first 60 meters of the subject property. This property, based on the submission by the applicant, currently is at 12% within the first 60 meters, and they're looking to go up to that, I believe it's 13.5%. So again, wanted to reiterate to the committee that 6 Mile Lake specifically has those two differentiating lot coverage requirements, again, for the purpose of ensuring not overdevelopment, to not have overdevelopment occur within those first 60 meters of a property. I wanted to reiterate to the committee as well, just I was looking at my notes, we do recall that there was also another letter of objection from, I believe, the Fisher family that was submitted at the previous application. Again, wanted to reiterate that to the committee. And thank you to the applicant for his comments about the orientation of the building. I just want to, again, reiterate to the committee, we understand that, you know, my comments about the orientation of the structure more towards his own shoreline, sure, would be maybe an improvement, but at the end of the day, this structure will still be, whether it's turned or not in this location, will be visible from every point of our client's property. And the orientation of that is just, again, more of a point of contention towards their viewing of the shoreline area. If the building were to be relocated, we would still be in objection. So again, thank you. I wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions from committee members? And I see a pen raised by Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of quick points. I think I remember reading through almost 500 pages this week. But there's two temporary garages. Are they being removed, or temporary structures? Are they being removed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, one of them is.
One of them is. Okay, and that's been calculated in the gross.
That is correct.
Lot coverage. Okay. The other thing is the type and size of tree. Can we put any recommendation in there so that, I mean, it's one thing to put a little 12-inch stubby in, it's another to put a 3-foot tree in. But I understand there's also a lot of rock outcropping there. So
Through you, Mr. Chair, what the intent is here is, I'm going to work with the applicant's agent and the applicant. And I mean, one of the recommended conditions that I put on is that they get a landscaping plan prepared by an actual landscape architect. I'm not allowing, I don't want them to just do it themselves.
Right.
So, I mean, we can work with the landscape architect to come up with species of vegetation that will not only like grow and continue to grow and not die off, but also some that are going to provide a good screened buffer. So
and one last comment, if I may, I would really encourage the applicant and his neighbors perhaps to chat a little bit further and see if orientation would help. Maybe there's a little bit of give and take, you know, we can't all have a 100% win. So I would encourage that if you could facilitate that, please, Ms. McCabe.
certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another question, Member Ribbit.
Yes, thank you. To you, Mr. Chair, I am just wondering if there's any reason that the cabin has to encroach into the setback. Is there any reason the cabin can't meet the side setback? Can it not be closer to the house? Why does it need to be so close to the property line?
Through you, Mr. Chair. From my understanding, I'm not sure, maybe Kaylee can help me with this one. Was it something to do with why the cabin had to be located there? Because of the septic system, or it was the hydro line? It's based on the hydro line.
Yes, the
Yeah.
original proposal was located underneath it, I do believe, and that's not allowed by building code.
That's correct. So the original submission did meet the side yard setback, but unfortunately it was under the hydro line, and that can't be done under the Ontario Building Code. Therefore, it had to be moved over.
May I just add something, Mr. Chair, to that?
So is there no other location on the property for the cabin?
Unfortunately, I would take what's brought into me, and that's what I have to process. So until it comes to the committee for discussion, I mean, that's up to the applicant where he wants it and where he wants to propose it. So
I could provide some history on this, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing an echo in the background there, but
that is the applicant's actual agent, Jamie Robinson
okay,
of MHBC.
okay. Just before we're in the committee portion of the application review, I have another question from Member Jarvis, please.
We have a bylaw in place that states that a side yard setback should be such and such a distance, and this building is not complying. We've got neighbors that don't agree. It's not a question, it's more of a statement. I think that if the neighbors can't agree, we should be working with the bylaw. And I see no reason why this cabin should be built within encroaching in on the side lot setback. These are small properties, they're wedged together. And in my mind, this kind of densification is great for the city, but in a cottage community, I can't understand why we'd be allowing anything encroaching on the side yard setback such as this. So I think we go with the side yard setback as part of our bylaws. That's why they're there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And there was some discussion about that previously, and I see the applicant is still online. Do you have any comments regarding the side yard setback?
Could I just maybe speak to this, Mr. Chairman, from the applicant's agent?
Okay, Mr. Robinson, you're very difficult to hear. I think you're having some microphone issues as well. So if there's some way you could improve that, I think.
Let me see, does that help? Is that any better?
It's a bit better.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with Zoom in our systems, but we're having the same issue. But just on the setback piece, the applicant did propose a sleeping cabin originally to the rear of the dwelling that met the side yard setback requirement. That was what the original proposal was. The neighbor did not agree with that location, which was further back. So the preferred location is the one that's before the tribunal right now. The applicant proposed a location that met the 5-meter setback, that was behind the dwelling, was underneath the hydro line. He was willing to move the hydro line, and that's what the building department speaking about. And the neighbor was not satisfied with the the location that complied with the bylaw from the side yard setback requirement. So not being able to get neighbor support for that location further back from the water, further back from the side lot line, the applicant submitted an application, or we've submitted an application on his behalf at the proposed location, which we believe meets the 4 tests of the minor variance, both for the side yard setback, also for the lot coverage piece. And your staff also supports this location meeting the 4 tests of the variance. So there has been considerable effort to work with the neighboring property owner. They're not supportive of the cabin at any location, which is why our client has proposed the location that they desire the most. So that's the history on why it hasn't proposed to meet. It was proposed at one point in time to meet that.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. And I see our planner has a further comment. Go ahead, please.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to reiterate the fact that, yes, it is imperative that they meet the side yard setback, but if they did move it closer to the dwelling, then they wouldn't meet the required distance between the dwelling. And so either way, it's because you have to be 5 meters from the dwelling or 5 meters from.
Yes.
Just for Mr. Robinson, yeah, you're still there with us. Good. So I wasn't hearing all of what you were saying, so I just need to just point of clarification, Jamie. The cabin was proposed in a different location. We all understand that. That different location did meet the side yard setback and other setback requirements. Was that a hydro issue then, or just the neighbor who was not happy with it?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Jarvis, the difference between, yes, it did meet the side yard setback requirement. The other location still required a variance for lot coverage because of the lot coverage issue. But the neighbor just, and my understanding, was not supportive of it at that location either. So they don't want a sleeping cabin. They feel that the lot coverage is the main issue. Or a significant issue. That was my understanding. So,
So that was a lot coverage issue objection from the neighbor, not a side yard setback issue, nor a hydro issue at that time.
that's my understanding, just lot coverage.
I think any neighbor that has massing the way these guys do shouldn't be complaining about somebody else having massing, but that's my opinion. I'm sorry that the original application wasn't okayed. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Member Predko, did you have a follow-up question?
Not one that's practical.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Oh, Ms. Ribbit.
Yes, I appreciate the comments from both planners, especially the planner representing the one neighbor who is objecting. I understand the issue with the massing and the overdevelopment within the high water mark. Of all of the variances and all the objections, perhaps the side yard setback could have been met. And if it didn't meet the requirements between the buildings, perhaps that's the variance that should have been sought as opposed to the side yard setback. That would alleviate the neighbor's concern, at least it meets the setback. I would be happier to see that variance with the cabin moving closer to the building and request that variance as opposed to, annoying the neighbors even further. So I would prefer to see that and have that happen. That would be something that I could agree with, but I have a hard time with this because of the massing. And again, it's because of the specific location. Other locations, it's conducive to that kind of growth or massing, but I think in this case, that would be a consideration that I could live with.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you had a comment, Victoria?
Mr. Chairman, this is your hearing, but this is not a debate.
I'm sorry, is that Jamie speaking or
Yeah,
Mr.
It is Mr. Robinson.
You're gonna have to do something with your microphone and we can virtually not make out what you're saying other than every
Let me
second.
try speaking closer. This is your hearing, but Ms. Lemieux's had her
But I had asked for a comment from Ms. Lemieux, so please raise your hand and we will come back to you later.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Robinson. I can appreciate what he's trying to say, that the public portion of this hearing is over, but I just wanted to clarify for committee because there was some discussion about the previous location for our applicant. I just wanted to clarify for members of the committee that on the original submission, the applicants were, of course, preferably not wanting to see any additional development on the site. However, they were in preference of that location, the previous location. However, we did have concerns with, again, the overall lot coverage, as in maybe the applicant would have considered removal of maybe the garage or more decking, things of that nature to bring that value down. And also at the time, again, the original application, the proposed vegetative buffering that the applicant had proposed was just not, we did not feel that it was enough to provide appropriate buffering at that time in the previous location. So I just want to reiterate to the committee that it's not necessarily that the neighbors have been opposed to every single location. It's just been an issue of, again, trying to protect their privacy. Appreciate the ability to speak again, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay. And Mr. Robinson, did you have a couple of comments?
No, I don't have anything more to say. I was just concerned with Ms. Lemieux continually debating when she's had her opportunity.
Thank you. And Member Schmidt.
Now, this is definitely a tough one. Familiar with both properties, and I commend the maintenance, and that's both of those properties are incredible, maintained and all the rest. Most people know that I'm comfortable sometimes with development that's on the properties, like the sizing, the massing, and what have you. I put heavy weight on the opinion of a neighboring that's most affected by the application. I am definitely concerned with in that area having such a tight setback in that location. I agree with Member Rivet from the standpoint of, if we're going to impact somebody's property, then have it impact their property more so than imposing it onto a neighboring property. If I was to make a suggestion or a wish here, it would be not necessarily a denial of this application, but maybe an opportunity for them to revisit, have a meeting side by side. They're adjoining property owners that both love the lake. Figure it out and bring it back to us would be what I would love to see. But I'm not comfortable supporting that type of a setback to a neighboring property on the lake.
Okay, thank you. But any further questions?
Thank you. I know you're going to acknowledge me.
Yeah.
I would agree 100% with Mr. Schmidt and Ms. Rivet. I think if there's going to be a side yard setback, I would strongly encourage it closer to the cottage. It's also going to make it more convenient, I think, for Mr. Santoro to get to the sleeping cabin, then because it could almost be covered. So I would strongly support a deferral at this point. Rather than a denial, because I don't think there's a strong flavor for approval at this point.
Okay. I seem to have a concerted effort, the part of the committee, a flavor for deferring this with the objective of the applicant and his neighbor discussing. I'm sorry.
I would just, I'd like to add one more thing, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if Kaylee could comment on if they went closer to the actual dwelling, would that become a building code issue?
It would depend on how close, but I don't think that's gonna really make a difference. You're still looking at the building because it's 5 meters. How close are you gonna allow them? You're looking at 16.5 feet if you're butting it right up against it. So that's not really gonna make a difference.
I'm not sure I understood your response here, Kaylee. You're saying is it hard to move it closer?
It would depend. Right? So because 5 meters is only 16 foot 4. So it really, are you gonna then attach it to the main cottage?
Okay, so
It depends, really, building wise, building code wise for building on the same property. No, if it was a neighboring property, it'd be different, but building code wise, it probably wouldn't. But now you're running into roof lines and all kind of other issues. So it really would depend on how close you're getting.
okay, all right, appreciate it. So there is some room for discussion. Member Pretko?
I will go back to that point, since we've come to a point of talking about potentially asking for a deferral or a referral. Perhaps there's also an opportunity to compromise on the size of the building cabin, which would help it fit better in the back or farther away from the side setback and help decrease the overall lot coverage.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Very well. We seem to have an appetite here for a deferral in this application. So I will propose an amendment to the resolution. So moved by member Jarvis, seconded by member Schmidt. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby defers minor variance application A22-15 to zoning bylaw 2014 as amended for 862 Haskets Drive to facilitate further discussion between the applicant and the neighbor, hopefully to get the issue resolved. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried and the application is deferred. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next application this morning is A23-10 for 2 Island 3370 Georgian Bay Shore. To the planner, please.
Through the chair, the subject property is an unsubdivided island located in Georgian Bay with an area of 3.1 hectares and an approximate lot frontage of 260 meters. The island is made up of granite rock and is heavily treed. The applicant has already built the dock and has started construction on the dryland boathouse and shed. The lands are designated waterfront within the district and township official plans and are zoned Go Home Bay Shoreline Residential Island. A site visit was conducted on May 8th. The purpose of this application is to facilitate the development of a dock, dryland boathouse, shed, and sleeping cabin. The dock will have a maximum width of 5.63 meters and area of 100 square meters, whereas a width of 3.1 meters and an area of 92.9 square meters is permitted.
Great.
The dryland boathouse will have a maximum width of 6.7 meters, whereas the zoning bylaw permits a maximum width of 6 meters. The dock, dryland boathouse, and shed contribute to the total cumulative width of in-water structures and land base within 10 meters of the high water mark. The maximum cumulative width of these structures is 30.7 meters, whereas 23 meters is permitted. A sleeping cabin is being proposed that is triangular in shape and has a 1.2 meter eave projection on all 3 sides, whereas the zoning bylaw only permits a 1.2 meter eave projection on one wall. The zoning bylaw only permits these accessory buildings and structures provided that a principal building, in this case a dwelling, has been constructed. However, the applicant is proposing that the dock, dryland boathouse, and shed be constructed prior to the dwelling. The shed is replacing an existing building with a legal non-complying front yard setback. The shed will maintain the existing front yard setback, however, will be increased in length and likely in height. The height of the existing shed was not documented prior to its removal. Applications to reconstruct or expand a legally non-conforming use should be evaluated under Section 45(2) of the Planning Act and are only subject to 2 tests, being whether the application is desirable for appropriate development of the subject property and whether the application will result in undue adverse impacts on the surrounding properties and neighborhood. When applying these tests, only the proposed expansion may be evaluated for undue adverse impacts. The intent and purpose of the official plan is not a relevant consideration when applying these tests. In order to refuse the application, the undue adverse impacts of the proposed expansion must be demonstrated by objective evidence and must be sufficient to override the property owner's right to reasonable flexibility, evolution, and expansion. The proposed shed has been expanded by 0.6 meters on each end, resulting in a total increase of only 3.84 square meters. The expansion is not interior space, rather landings or porches on each end of the building. The height of the existing shed was not documented prior to its removal. However, the proposed shed has a height of 4 meters, which is permitted in our zoning bylaw. The applicant has confirmed that only end-of-life trees and those that were located within the future dwelling footprint were removed. The proposed development is concentrated in one area, being the south end of the island, with the least amount of vegetation, and the proposed accessory buildings are limited to 1 story. The island forms one of the largest residential properties within Go Home Bay waterfront community. The proposed dryland boathouse has an area of 43.8 square meters, and the dimensions outlined in the zoning bylaw permit a boathouse with an area of 54 square meters. The intent of our provisions regarding docks are to limit the size and number of docks on a property to protect the aesthetics of the waterfront community by encouraging a natural shoreline and preventing it from being overdeveloped. The proposed dock wraps around the contours of the granite rock shoreline, having an area of 100 square meters and a maximum width of 5.6 meters. Only a portion of the proposed dock has a width of 5.6 meters, and it is the only dock on the island. Staff believe the design of the dock complements the contour of the granite rock and that a 7.1 square meter increase in size does not create a negative visual impact. The proposed shed, dryland boathouse, and dock are included in the cumulative width calculation of shoreline structures. The total cumulative width of these structures is 30.7 meters. The shed and dryland boathouse are nestled in pockets of existing natural vegetation, and the dryland boathouse is partially screened by this vegetation. Considering the extensive frontage and the dominating presence of granite rock and mature trees, which is supported by site photos, staff believe an increase of 7.7 meters to the maximum permitted cumulative width of shoreline structures is appropriate. A stage 1 archaeological assessment and fish habitat impact assessment are required as a condition of approval and prior to issuance of building permits. Staff have informed the applicant that if the stage 1 archaeological assessment and/or fish habitat impact assessment reveal that the proposed development cannot proceed as is, they risk having to seek an additional variance and/or delaying the building permit process, as revisions to the development plans may be required. Staff have also included a condition of approval that requires the owner to enter into an agreement with the township to ensure that a permit for the dwelling is obtained and the construction completed prior to the expiration of the minor variance application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, have we had correspondence on this application?
3 letters of no objection were received from Andre Musso, John O'Hara, and Tim Leishman, and 9 letters of objection were received from Deborah Prince, Jane Bedeau, Julia Huckey, and Douglas Harris, Peter Folds, Ian McDonald, Michael Harrison, Caroline Proctor, Brian Bonner, and Doug Grundy, and 1 letter of support was received from Will Crawford Brown.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant present, and do they wish to address the committee with any comments? Please turn on the microphone and identify yourself for the record, please.
So I'm Charles Gain, and I'm the owner. I'd just like to say that this is a very remote area of Go Home, and you know, the waterway really doesn't have any substantial boat traffic. So there's just me using it and my neighbor, who's the distant neighbor to the east. So I think that there's virtually no impact on any of the accessory building variances that have been proposed. And the planning has done a great job at documenting that. And all the planning variances, I believe, are minor in nature. I hope you will agree, because they're generally within 10%. The dock is 10% larger. The boathouse is about 10% longer. It's 2 feet longer than allowed, but the area is the same. And that shed, the shed was rebuilt at the same footprint, but there was the porches added on each end, more for weatherability. Now, regarding the, there's one variance that is the sleeping cabin and the overhang. And I brought a model. I don't know if I can show it to you. It might help because it shows the nature of, you know, all these variances are supporting this project. This is what I'm proposing. And I hope you'll agree that this thing has been designed to complement the natural configured around the rocks. Its whole design has been to create this large sheltering roof. In fact, the roof drops down to 6 feet high. Think of reasonable size. But the variance we're talking about the back, think of this triangle that was actually been pulled up. The reason I need the variance is you can see that the roof overhang is very important. It's a 4-foot overhang instead of a 2. And sometimes we forget that we're doing all these variances, but this is what we're trying to do. And like it's been designed to be unique to this site. Complementary materials used, it'll be sustainable, like solar. Good. That's what I want. But I'd just like to say, you know, I just hope that these variances, that you feel that they are minor. I do also, and I respectfully put that decision, my opinion out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gain. I'm sure there will be questions as we go along. Is there any member of the public present who would wish to address the committee? And if so, please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could start off, my name is Peter Folds. My municipal address is 31834 Georgian Bay Shore. I'm here today on behalf of the Madawaska Club of Goham Bay. And if I could share my screen, I have some slides to share with you. So the Madawaska Club of Goham Bay is a corporation. It is a property owner in Goham Bay. It is also a cottagers association and includes in its members 140 of the roughly 70 cottage properties in Goham Bay. So roughly 82% of the property owners. I'm going to focus my comments on the shoreline structures, that is the shed, the dock, and the boathouse. And in short, what we are requesting is that the committee deny the variance to increase the cumulative width of these shoreline structures and deny the variance for the increased dock area. And I just want to say, comment that I've been a member of our land use planning committee for 6 years. And in that period of time, we have considered and commented on 12 planning applications. And this is the first planning application that we have opposed in that period of time. I also want to comment that the decision to oppose this application was made by our board of directors, the board of directors who are elected by our members and not by our committee. Our committee makes recommendations to our board of directors and the board of directors makes the decisions. As you've heard, these shoreline structures are already built. They were built without building permits, and they were built without planning approvals. The dock construction continued to be built after stop work orders were issued. But more importantly, for the purpose of this proceeding, I'm suggesting that these structures were both designed and built without regard to the zoning bylaw or to the policies of the official plan. This photograph shows the state of the dock construction on June 21st, after the stop work order was issued and the day before the stop work order was posted on the property. This photograph shows the dock completed on September the 1st. This photograph just gives you a general image of the three structures along the shoreline. On the left, you see the newly reconstructed building that is being referred to as a shed, but previously non-conforming structure. The boathouse in the middle and the dock in the foreground. Dealing first of all with the shed, it has a setback of 4.6 meters, whereas 20 meters is required. As I pointed out, the existing shed has been replaced by a newly reconstructed and expanded building. It is longer, taller, and greater in floor area. It is more visible than the previous structure with a greater presence on the landscape. And it has been repurposed as an exercise room and storage area. These photographs will show you on the left the original structure, and on the right the new structure under construction. You can see that it's taller. It has been extended lengthwise front to back, and you'll also notice that some of the vegetation in the form of junipers that had previously existed on the site have been removed. Some of the branches have been removed from trees adjacent to the shed. This is just an excerpt from the drawings for the shed, indicating the proposed use as an exercise room and storage area. Dealing with the boathouse, it has a width of 6.7 meters, where 6 meters is permitted. The boathouse is designed with the roof peak at the front, which is results in the elevation at the front of the building to be 4.8 meters. Now, although the overall height of the building is technically compliant with the zoning bylaw, because the zoning bylaw measures height to the midpoint between the peak and the eave, the way this boathouse is designed tends to increase its presence and impact on the landscape. And there you can see the image with the peak of the boathouse at the front presenting to the water. The zoning bylaw allows up to 3 docks in an SRI zone of this size, property of this size, with a maximum cumulative area for all docks of 92.9 square meters. The applicant has chosen to build and has built a single dock of 100 square meters. The dock has a capacity to moor up to 5 large boats, which I would submit enables greater density and intensity of use of this site. This is an extract from the site plan, just to give you an idea of the dock. You'll notice that there's a dotted line in the middle, which represents what was a previous floating dock at this location. That gives you a little bit of perspective on a comparison between that and what is currently at the property. Admittedly, the floating dock that was at that location was on the smaller side for floating docks, but a typical large dock in the Go Home Bay area would encompass this area here, which is roughly 10 feet wide by 45 feet long. And it is close to the maximum projection for a dock, and it is the maximum width for a dock. That would be a typical large dock in Go Home Bay. In this case, the applicant has added this wing or arm of the dock that runs parallel to the east shore, presents to the water an additional roughly 400 square feet of dock space, or 40 square meters, and extending facing the water 60 feet in length. Here's an image of the east facing side of the dock and an image of the south facing side of the dock. And this, just to give you a little perspective, this boat I would estimate to be 20 feet in length, parked on or docked on one corner of the dock. So I'd like to turn now to the issue of cumulative width of the three shoreline structures. The bylaw permits a cumulative width of a maximum cumulative width of 23 meters. In the SRI 3 zone, the cumulative width is limited to 10% of the lot frontage up to a maximum of 23 meters. It's measured parallel to the shoreline, and it includes all land-based structures within 10 meters of the high water mark, regardless of the length of the shoreline or the size of the lot. And I point that out because one of the comments in the planner's report indicates that this is one of the largest properties in Go Home Bay. I would beg to differ with that assessment. There are several lots and islands that are much larger than this property. All of them are subject to the same 23 meter limit for cumulative width of shoreline structures. The bylaw for cumulative width is not limited to the Go Home Bay area. There are similar restrictions in other parts of the township who have developed their own community plans. In 6 Mile Lake, similar 23 meter limit. In Wawatasi, a 23 meter limit. And in Cognisheen, the limit is 20 meters. The shed, the boathouse, and the dock collectively have a cumulative width of 30.7 meters. They exceed the maximum by 33.5%. And that's because the applicant has chosen to do a number of things with this development. First of all, he's chosen to retain and enlarge a non-compliant structure. He's added a second shoreline structure, the boathouse. He's exceeded the maximum permitted area for the dock. And he's designed the dock with a width parallel to the shoreline of 18.3 meters or 60 feet. So the dock alone represents 80% of the maximum permitted cumulative width of shoreline structures. And in this drawing just shows you the measurement of the cumulative width of the combined width of the dock and the boathouse is 25.8 meters. And I would point out it would be greater than that if the dock and the boathouse were measured and added individually. In this case, there is some overlap, and the combined width is 25.8 meters. And the width parallel to the shoreline of the shed is 4.9 meters for a total of 30.7 meters. Just dealing with the purpose and intent of the official plan. First of all, the general waterfront policies for the township are contained in part in these two paragraphs. F.1.3.2, which states that the character of the waterfront designation will be maintained by retaining the overall low-density built form of development while generally preserving the shoreline in a natural, undeveloped appearance. And the zoning bylaw shall regulate the number and length of docks to protect the natural shoreline and character. Our community undertook a community planning process in 2006. It was an extensive process with extensive community involvement. We hired professional planners for that purpose, and we worked closely with the township's planners. And part of the process involved an assessment of the existing structures in the Go Home Bay planning area. And our planners did a review of those and prepared a sense of place report. And one of the comments in the sense of place report stated that modest docks, both in the manner of number and size, are a basic component of the sense of place in the Go Home Bay area. And this is one of the foundational documents to our community plan, which is now incorporated in the Go Home Bay waterfront community policies of the official plan. And carrying that policy forward into those community policies, again from the official plan, the built form guidelines state in part, it is a goal of this official plan to protect the character of the Go Home Bay waterfront community as a low part that's behind the other image, but it's a low intensity, low density wilderness cottage area.
Pardon me, Mr. Paul, I hate to interrupt you here, but I was expecting to hear some additional comments. You submitted this exact presentation to the committee prior to the meeting. I'm sure there's going to be questions for you regarding the content of this. I'm just I'm here. I would ask, when we get to that point, questions for you, and I expect they will. If we could get specific answers to topics that you have raised in here. I commend you on a very thorough presentation, and you've raised a lot of points that have already been on the minds of those people who've had the opportunity to visit the site and so on. So I think we could be more efficient if we could direct some specific questions to you, if you don't mind.
I am getting very near the end of my presentation. If you could just bear with me for a couple of more minutes.
All right, I appreciate it if you would be expedient.
Thank you. So just to finish off, those policies are carried into the built form guidelines that are in the official plan and are intended to limit the number, length, and size of docks and to regulate the nature and form of shoreline structures. So what we are asking for once again is to deny the variance for the cumulative width of shoreline structures and to deny the variance for the increase in dock area. And the reason for that is in our submission, the proposed variances are not minor. They do not maintain the intent and purpose of the official plan, and they do not maintain the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. And now I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to address this application? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public portion of the application and bring the matter before the committee for questions or comments. And
excuse me, I raised my hand and I wanted to speak, but nobody paid attention to me.
I'm sorry, we didn't see your hand.
So I'm Derek Wishart. I'm the owner of property number 4 on Island 3430 and neighboring property. And I just wanted to state that I support the position of the Madawaska Club and the arguments being raised by the Madawaska Club.
Okay, thank you. Madam Secretary, did you get the gentleman's name? Very good. Is there anyone else online that we don't see that wishes to? Okay, there are a couple more people. Can you see them? Okay. Okay, so who do we have? All right, so Ms. Proctor, do you wish to address the committee on this application?
Yes, I do. And my husband and I were before this committee as well, previous occasion asking for a variance for our dock due to the fish habitat, and we were familiar with the process. I just wanted to comment on Mr. Gaines' comment that it's a remote area and there's only one distant neighbor. And we are in fact a direct neighbor, and our cottage and our dock look directly into these shoreline structures. The dock, the shed, and the boathouse are directly in our view and our line of vision. So I just wanted to comment on that. It does directly impact us as neighbors. And we also support the position of the Madawaska Club and feel the variances are not minor. That also, like, just as members of the public who went through the committee process and got a variance and didn't build until the variance was given, I was just personally upset about continuing to see work continue when there were stop work notices, and felt that the planning process wasn't followed. And you know, that doesn't set a great precedent in the community. I don't think it respects this committee and this decision making process. So I just wanted to add those points as well.
Thank you very much. The next gentleman that's on there. Is that Derek Wishart? Okay, I see Mr. McDonald on there. Would you wish to address the committee?
Yes, sir. Please, just a couple of brief comments.
Can you identify yourself and your address, please?
I am Ian McDonald. My site in Go Home Bay is 31198 Georgian Bay Shore.
Thank you.
I wanted to just make 2 points. The first of which is to underline the fact that the fundamental intent of the official plan for our community was to limit the visual impact of man-made structures in the natural landscape of Georgian Bay. Peter Folds referred to a number of excerpts from our plan that speak specifically to that point, and remind that the way of achieving these objectives would ideally be to minimize the presence of buildings in the landscape through built form decisions, making them low, making them dark, making them recede into the landscape, which I would argue has not been done here. The second point is the staff report identifies that the shoreline of the property totals 260 meters in length. And I would like to respectively remind the committee that the breadth of the open shoreline that represents the face of this property to the Inner Bay community of which it is a part is approximately 70 meters or 75 meters wide. As the remainder of the shoreline, as perceived from the Inner Bay, is around the corner and not visible as a function of this, perceived dimensions. The cumulative width of these structures at 30.7 meters is something in excess of 40% of that exposed face to this Inner Bay community. And that's a percentage that exceeds that of any other property in the neighborhood and is out of alignment with the intentions of the official plan. Further, I would like to point out that the built form of the boathouse with its high side facing the water at 4.877 meters in height exacerbates the already overbuilt character of this proposal because it appears bigger from the water than it otherwise might. I support all of Peter's recommendations for denying this application. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Do we have anyone else online that? Okay, with no further comments, I will close the public portion of the application and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or concerns. And members, we'll begin with Member Jarvis.
Yeah, to our planner, there is a community plan for Go Home. We've just been reminded of that. Was that considered when this report was being put together?
Through the chair, yes, that's one of the 4 tests of a minor variance.
Okay. Thank you for the reminder. I appreciate that. It's okay, Shania. No, it just didn't, it doesn't seem that in the way things were reported that it came out that way. And you did that very nicely. Thank you, without hitting me over the head. It's quite all right. We'll have another conversation later on, maybe privately about that. I'm just having a hard time because if you go into Go Home Bay, and I know a number of the residents there, you can see what the built form is for that area. And while I commend the applicant on a very dramatic design proposal, which is quite admirable in looking at it, I don't know that it's appropriate for the location, and that's the whole aspect of what we're dealing with here. I know we're going down the road with just the specifics of the dock being the big item, but I have trouble with a product that is not in line with what would be considered the built form for the area, which is part of the community plan idea and concept that's in place here. So that was why my question was. I had another one. I'll come up with it. Well, we're talking about something else. I'm sure you'd love to hear another question from me. Anyway, that's it for now.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. And could I ask, did you actually do a site visit at that property?
Yes, actually, yeah, it's a lovely piece of property. And like I said, I think that I mean, the buildings in and of themselves, the design concept is really neat. I just don't think it's appropriate for the area, and that's what we're trying to deal with here in that concept, because there's a community plan in place with it. So yes, I did see the site, and I'm not sure that the trees were taken down. I love this end of life. Was that end of life tree? Is that what it was? That's an interesting term.
That was from our planning department.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah.
You can't tell now, the trees are down, whether there is any context to what their status in life was. But definitely there has been some growth that's been taken down. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, that happens in all locations. Again, I thought it was a nice piece. It's a nice piece of property, but he's got neighbors on both sides. And the Proctors obviously are the one side looking right at your dock. And I'm not sure who's on the other side, but there is another dock on the other side. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too had the privilege of seeing the site. And I'll try to build maybe on Mr. Jarvis's comment about built form and give you my perspective, because 2005 and 2006, I was the president of the Cognizine Cottages Association, and we worked hand in hand with Madawaska Club to develop our individual plans, community plans. So I understand when he says 140 of 170 people got involved, they agreed with certain aspects, because we went through exactly the same thing. We had 75% involvement in our community. It's an arduous process to get consensus from everybody. And there's some that want more to the left and some of them want more to the right. I can speak for Cognizine, where we tried to find a gentle middle, and I think Go Home has done exactly the same thing. I think to ignore that community plan now would be a travesty and just a smack in the face for the work that was done back in that time. So I would support Mr. Folt's position 100%.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Member Rivet?
Yes, thank you. I certainly have no problem with variance requests for applicants who want to build a dock before they build their main dwelling, especially on an island. Makes perfect sense. You want to have a good solid landing. I appreciate why those docks are being built. I appreciate when you're building, you might want storage while you're building. I appreciate that all the time. Sometimes they are temporary in location and can be moved after the build. We've seen that before too. What's troubling is going ahead and, doing extensive building and planning at great cost without any permission whatsoever, ignoring the community plans. And then what troubles me is when the building continues after a stop work order at great additional cost, and a risk that you may have to take it all down because it's not been approved. This is not the first application we've seen where something was built without permission and had to be torn down. A building much greater than what we're seeing here. These community plans were well tested. I went through the last official plan review. We went through those community plans. People put their heart and souls to develop those plans to protect the shorelines. I don't have a problem with the dock if it were smaller. I don't have a problem with the design. I think they're beautiful. That design is lovely, but we're not dealing with that design today. I think the overbuilding of the storage shed, the shed from a wood shed to that building is really over the top. I can't agree to accept that. I could accept the boat dock if it were perhaps brought into the correct size, if that were made smaller. But I think that I support the residents and the people in opposition to the build, especially after it continued to be built after the stock work order. That would have been the time to have the discussion before it went ahead. So I cannot accept this. I appreciate staff's comments, but I also appreciate the work that went into those community plans and how important they are for those residents. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I would also kind of, I think the boathouse and the shed right now are rather stark in their presentation because of their mid-construction. But I do share Member Rivet's concerns about the building without the luxury of a permit, especially with the community plans that are in the different bay areas. I guess my question would be, in terms of our recommendations or powers today, if we were to approve a dock of a smaller size, would that require Mr. Gain to have to disassemble part of that dock? I guess that's back to the building department in terms of how that would.
Yes, well, obviously you'd have to approve the dock before any other structure, but if that minor variance was approved and nobody objected to it, he would have to build the dock according to whatever is granted.
I mean, essentially, I think my view is that the boathouse and the shed may, as they age, fall into the background. But if the dock is beyond the proportions that the community plan really will accept, cumulatively and through three different docks, I think we need to address that.
Okay, thank you. No further question. There is one from Member Schmidt.
So I'm going a little bit into uncharted territories and relatively fresh meat on the committee here. And I'm going to look at this from the perspective of, or the caution of, if I completely agree with the potential of shrinking down that dock to try to bring that into a bit more conformity. I did a quick search in the immediate area with some programs I have, and there's a 110-foot cumulative dock literally just on the other side of the point there that I could see. You're in a bad situation right now because you went ahead, you're getting your hands slapped, you're going about this the wrong direction. I get that. I agree that the structures that are currently there, once they're appropriately finished and sided and done, right now it's a blue looking tie vac. It couldn't be in a worse state right now in the photography. I think the end result of what you're going to do probably will be quite respectful of the property. We have to respect the community plans. When we go in and we buy these properties, we have to know what our exposure is and what the potential ramifications are. Again, I would hope that there's a way to work with this situation to maybe, obviously, I don't know what the right answer is. If it's a straight up decline, I guess the only other caution I have is that if this is the decline, what's our status if this goes to the next level and the cost concerned, right? That's, I think, another thing that we have to be wary of. Yeah, if I look at just the numbers of any other minor variance lens that we put into place, we're within a percentage that normally wouldn't be a huge issue. So I hope we navigate this water carefully and how we just make this decision, because there's ramifications. And many different ways.
Okay, thank you very much. I think everybody's had the opportunity to contribute to this, and I must say that I did have the opportunity. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you may, sir. Go ahead.
Take this whole.
So in terms of the shed, there's been talk that it's been enlarged. Yes, it was enlarged in height only because the roof was falling apart, but it complies with the bylaw in height. And the actual footprint, I built this thing within that, the actual shed is still the same size. It has 2 feet on each side. And I agree with the 2 members that said, yes, this thing is, you're looking at it as a blue skin thing. It seems to jump out at you. The final product will be a gray, dark gray. And it's been pushed back into the trees as much as possible. So yes, I feel it will recede. Now, what hurt me a lot is the average, the cumulative width forces you to take an average. So the shed appears to be 4.9 meters by this, the way it's dimensioned. It's only 3.2 meters wide. So the net effect is it's been like highlighted as being larger. And in terms of the dock, the area at 100 is that's 8% larger than 92 that's allowed. And I'd like to say, in my defense, if there's any defense, I had a planning review that didn't notice some variances. And I submitted building permit drawings and paid for the permit fees. And only then I was told, wait, you have to wait to build the cottage first. And I was like halfway through and this thing was going to like fall apart. I had to finish part of it. So, I mean, I'm not excusing it, but I'm saying this will be built to the highest OBC requirements. Both sheds comply completely with the zoning bylaw. Although they say it's high on one side, that's not part of the bylaw. And they say, well, you could have turned the slope here and there. I mean, we have bylaws. And there are no variances in those things. So parts of them comply, parts I'm asking as a variance. I respectfully put myself up there.
Okay, thank you. And our planner had a comment as well.
Through the chair, I actually have a few comments just to address some of the concerns by some of the members here. I'm going to start off with appropriately addressing Member Jarvis's question about the policies of Go Home Bay. First, I want to note that the policies for Go Home Bay regarding docks are very limited and basically just say, look at the zoning bylaw. So I think that addresses the dock in terms of the official plan policy there. And then section F5745 contains policies regarding built form guidelines and shoreline structures within the Go Home Bay. This section, in terms of boathouses and sleeping cabins, refers to their massing, their height, and it says that they should be limited to 1 story with a maximum height of 5 meters. The proposed dryland boathouse has a height of 3.96 meters, and the sleeping cabin has a height of 3.86 meters. Well, with conforming with those policies in the official plan. All right, my next, let me just work through the list. I do also want to say that the neighboring properties, this is an unsubdivided island. I did some measurements using the tools available to me, and the neighboring properties are over 100 meters away from the shoreline that's being developed. Over 100 meters. And in terms of the shed, we actually cannot, you have to base the shed on the 2 tests only. And for us to deny without actually proving that, where was it here that I said, there is adverse impacts and that they are demonstrated by objective evidence, we cannot deny that for the shed. You will lose at the OLT. I'm just putting that out there. It's 2 tests. It's very clear of what they are. And unless you can demonstrate that the expansion to the shed, which is the 2 landings on each side for a flat surface, are going to adversely impact, then there's no grounds to not approve the shed. Those are my
Question,
comments.
just before you go on there, you were emphasizing or underlining the fact that it's 100 meters away. The key element there, is it in the line of sight of the neighbors? You know, is the massing that we're talking about here in line of sight of the neighbors?
Again, through the chair, the boathouse is 1 story in height. The shed is 1 story in height. They're also surrounded by vegetation and not like pushed back into the vegetation. I don't know about you, but I don't have good eyes. If I were on one of those properties 100 meters away, I would see specks. That's all I would see.
Respectfully, did you do a site visit, Shania?
Yes, I did. Yes.
And so, and obviously saw the, so that would have been recent, so you would have seen the existing conditions there?
Correct. That was in May where I saw the boathouse and the start of the construction of the dock. I also walked around the entire site and observed that you cannot actually view the shoreline. If you are facing the island from the west, there are no views of the shoreline structures at all. And to the east, the boathouse is actually surrounded by vegetation that blocks your view of it completely. Again, this is immediately to the east, not as if you're facing the property. But again, you have to be out in the lake to face the property. I hope that addresses your comment.
Well, it certainly adds to our understanding, but I just might say if everybody's had their oar in the water, so to speak, I did manage to get out and have a look at that property, and I would just say, for the benefit of those that didn't make it, if this is a property that certainly exemplifies what the whole reason for planning is all about. You know, this is a part of our heritage. This is a piece of property that was used as an inspiration for the group of 7. And if you were there, it takes your breath away. It's beautiful. And there's a lot of concern and a lot of work been done by the residents and the members of the Madawaska Club to preserve that, and for a lot of very good reasons. There are lots of other cottages that are in that general area that have been built to a form that blend into the natural environment that they're in, and there's some of them that I've gone by that, had I not had a reason to go there, I would never have seen them. The choice of construction materials, the color, the setbacks that they have, and the foliage or vegetation covers them. So the concern here is the impact that it has on the in the environment, and I think the effort here is to conserve the heritage of that site. And if I'm hearing what the members are saying correctly, it's not the fact that the applicant can't build there. It's just that they want to make sure that the construction of that doesn't in any way take away from the value of the heritage of that property. So I think we're very fortunate that we have an architect who's in charge of this. We're also very fortunate in that the construction that's taken place on this property is minor. In the grand scheme of things, it's minor. I have a feeling from the presentation that we had from Mr. Gain that he is looking forward to being a welcome part of that community, and I think it was obviously a timing issue. Had you had the benefit of being able to spend some time with the planning department, I think a lot of these issues could have been addressed. You seem to me to be the type of guy who would very much try and comply with what's being required. So I think the message that I'm getting from members of the committee by the comments have been made, that the spirit is to either deny or defer this, certainly not to approve it as it's being presented. So if I read the resolution as it sits, which is worded towards agreement, if you choose not to agree, then the application is denied. Is there any spirit of deferral, or should we make a decision otherwise? There's one.
Through the chair, I formatted the resolution so that there's a list of the variances being requested. so that you can specifically go through and determine which ones members are willing to approve or deny. Like I will say before, the shed, I don't think you guys actually have the ability to deny the shed, to be honest, under the 4 tests or under the 2 tests for that minor variance. And you would lose going to OLT because you don't have objective evidence. So I just want to throw that out there, that you can go through the list and choose what ones you want to deny, what ones you want to approve. It is formatted that way to make things more easier, especially on the back end with issuing notices and things like that.
Well, this has quite a number of different portions to it. So the one that you are referring to on this list is a building permit. Which one's for the shed? Which one did you specifically identify as the shed?
Through the chair, I'm not sure what document we're looking at right now. If I could come over and.
It says the resolution lists dock, dryland, boathouse, sleeping cabin, and shed. It doesn't look to be.
What was the decision? Separate decision. Yeah, this decision separated.
Okay.
These are the conditions. So those are the studies that they require. And the fact that they need permits and things.
So we can just like cross out if we don't want to provide variance for the dock.
But there's multiple for each item. So there's 2 variances for the boathouse. There's 2 for the dock. 1 for the sleeping cabin.
Yeah.
And then the 2 tests of the shed. Which again, we don't know.
Well, then there's, so what we're.
I throw out a suggestion.
Only after Mr. Matthews has made his. You should see how this is worded. Yeah, I think this is unique. All right, very well. Let's proceed with this. Due to a number of reasons, including the way that this resolution is drafted, it is my recommendation that this matter be deferred in order to give the planning department an opportunity to resolve some of these things that are on here. And certainly, Mr. Yanis, I appreciate you being here. I think there's an opportunity to get this thing back on track before you get any further into it. I would certainly hope that you would work with Mr. Poles and the planning department to come to some agreement so we could go forward. So based on that, I will read a resolution, revised resolution, moved by member Rivet, seconded by member Schmidt. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby defers minor variance application A23-10 for construction of dock, boathouse, sleeping cabin, and shed until further notice. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried and the application is deferred.
Sorry, aren't there like variances that you can just strike off right now? There's
Well,
1 or 2 of them.
We were trying to do that, but you'd have to see the way this thing is worded. Would have to revisit it. You're thinking that you need to do something.
Well, there are some technical
Sorry,
ones that are
the
just,
motion's been deferred, so we have to move on to the next item. Thank you.
okay.
You can talk with planning afterwards. Thank you. And based on a submission by member Schmidt, we will have a 10-minute bio break and we'll return at 12:25. Thank you.
I have a question. Why did we vote Mr. Lanzarotta's position in the agenda?
I was surprised.
So you're hang on to that.
No, she's.
What? It's more important.
Yes, yeah, yeah, that's what she said.
Because when I went to the site visit yesterday, I met AJ.
Hello,
He says, I'm way down the list.
your microphones are on.
Before me, and I said, yeah, or
Your microphones are on.
say, we're getting close.
You're never gonna do that again, are you?
I didn't tell him to do that. That's what he said he was going to do.
Microphones are on.
Because he said, I'm going to give me 15 minutes.
Hello, 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 microphones are on.
Well, that's why I want to say. What a nice guy. So. Last year, that's terrible.
We are ready to go again. Okay, thank you and welcome back after that break. Our next application is A 23-34 for 374 Portage Road. And okay, maybe we'll go on to is yours the next one, Deb? All right, then we'll review application A 23-35 for 7690 Go Home Lake Shore. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I apologize. A minor variance application was received by the township on June 15th, 2023. The property was acquired in 1959 by the parents of the current owners. The owners of the property received a building permit in 2001 for an addition to the existing cottage that was constructed in 1960. At that time, a wraparound deck was built on the cottage that the owners believed to be part of the building permit application and have since been advised that it was not. The deck encroaches into the high water mark setback and a building permit cannot be issued until such time as a variance is granted.
Thank you. Have we had any correspondence in this application?
One letter of support was received from Earl and Carol Missiner.
Thank you. Is the applicant present and do they wish to add further comments to what the planning department has presented? If so, please turn on the mic, identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. My name is Victoria Hoffman here with Flow Drawings and Design Inc. We're located at 3 Violet Drive, Port Severn. I am here on behalf of Jill Wharton, the property owner who's beside me. I don't really have anything to add on this one, but we have we're here for if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Miser, anything that you'd like to add? Okay, thank you. With that, I'll bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. Yes, Member Predko.
Just a quick clarification. I think Ms. McCabe said high water mark, but I think she meant shore road allowance. Because Go Home Lake doesn't have a high water mark.
I apologize. Yes, you are correct.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, that's normally Mr. Jarvis's. Okay, all right. So if there are no further questions or comments, I will read the resolution. Moved by member Rivet, seconded by member Schmidt. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Community of Adjustment approves minor variance application A23-35 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 7690 Go Home Lake Shore to permit the construction and recognition of a deck on the existing non-compliant dwelling subject to the provisions of zoning bylaw 2014-75. The above noted approval is subject to the following conditions: that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision, and that this decision applies only to the proposed existing deck on the existing dwelling as of the date of this decision, as indicated in Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. And that this decision upon expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried and the application is approved. Thank you.
Sorry for the long day, but you know how.
Our next application is A23-34 for 374 Portage Road. To the planner, please.
Through the chair. The purpose of this application is to facilitate the construction of an addition onto the existing detached dwelling, a covered deck and wraparound deck that result in an increased height and gross floor area within a required yard. The existing dwelling has a legal non-complying front yard setback of 12.47 meters and is a legal non-conforming use. The current dwelling has a gross floor area of 129.4 square meters and a building height of 4.23 meters. Whereas the proposal results in a dwelling with a gross floor area of 303.56 square meters and building height of 4.82 meters. The existing dwelling also has a deck in the front yard, which is being replaced as it is not safe and will have the same setback. The subject property has an area of 34,155.4 square meters or 8.4 hectares and approximately 150 meters of frontage onto South Bay and Baxter Falls. The front yard has a significant slope towards the water that is covered with natural vegetation. The lands are designated waterfront within the district and township official plans and are located within the Honey Harbor coastal waterfront community. The property is zoned tourist commercial type 2 and a small portion is zoned environmental protection wetland. The shoreline contains type 1 fish habitat and the lands are located within a deer wintering area, stratum 2. A detailed fisheries impact assessment was provided by Azimuth Environmental Consulting Inc. that concluded no impacts to type 1 fish habitat or navigable waters are anticipated, and the proposed development should not contravene the Federal Fisheries Act. The recommendations included in the fish habitat impact assessment are to be implemented throughout the construction of the proposed development as a condition of approval. A site visit was conducted on August 31st, and staff are recommending approval.
Thank you. Has there been any correspondence on this application?
No correspondence was received.
Thank you. Is the applicant or their agent present and do they wish to address the committee? And please identify yourself for the record.
Victoria Hoffman from Flow Drawings, 3 Violet Drive, Port Severn. In an effort to be as quick as possible here, 3 quick points. The house was built in the 60s, I think like 1966. It's in need of some renovation and the space itself doesn't work for the current property owner and caretaker. Of the there's 59.5 square meters that are being proposed in the 20-meter setback, most of which I would literally say like 95% of that is already developed with the deck. Some of the deck has fallen off or been taken down for safety reasons, but and in doing so also none of the front yard setbacks are being proposed to be changed. All of it is intended to kind of be off the back and around the side. John White is also here to speak to anything.
Good afternoon, your chair and committee.
with regards to Victoria's proposal, there's essentially no tree removal required in this plan. The comment about the deer wintering area, it may well show up as that through M&R. As somebody lives in the neighborhood, it's a transitional area for the deer. This is a trailer park that's been in existence since early 60s, to my understanding and knowledge. I have a funny suspicion that maybe during some zoning changes, it was never recognized that there's always been a house and a single family dwelling on that property. So I expect that when zoning was changed, I know we did a lot of that, I think in the early 2000s. It was done without necessarily consulting any of the landowners. We've had a look at everything. One of the things that I expect to come up at some point through today's meeting is the septic. The septic was recently redone for the entire park, and the existing dwelling was removed from the previously enjoyed septic system through building permit application process. We'll definitely be in contact, obviously, with the building department with regards to septic. As far as the character of the neighborhood, we did our best to have a look at it, and I try and be objective when I'm looking at things as to how I would feel if my neighbor was doing something. It's a relatively, in my estimation, substantial addition to this otherwise small building. The west side neighbor can't see any of this because of the topography and the trees, and of course we have no desire to cut trees down. The only neighbor to the north is the newest neighbor whom we just constructed a cottage on their behalf. Again, when you look from their front yard, they face different directions, so they don't see one another. The neighbors to the east, there is shared driveways and so on, and there's accessory buildings between any of their family dwellings, so there's nothing to see there. The south view is all open space. When you look at it on a map, there's not even potential for a neighbor to the south. I think that that pretty much covers everything that I had, unless anybody has any questions on. Yeah, thank you.
This decision are implemented. And that this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for this development. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved. Our next application is A23-36 for 315 Rocky Shore Road. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. An application for a minor variance was received by the township on June 29th, 2023, further to the pre-application consultation process. The intent of the owner to construct a 116 square meter garage on the property, which is in keeping with the size of the neighboring garage. There are 2 areas on the property that has been identified as being environmentally sensitive, and the location of the proposed garage has been pushed further west in order to provide a greater distance from the sensitive areas. In order to construct the garage in the proposed location, a minor variance is required for a reduction in the minimum rear yard setback and also an increase in the maximum floor area permitted for a garage in the site-specific shoreline residential 1 exception 36 zone.
Have we had any correspondence in this application?
No correspondence has been received.
Is the applicant present and do they wish to address the committee?
Mr. Chair, committee, staff, happy Friday. I'm only here to.
Could I ask you to identify yourself?
Sorry,
and give
my name
us
is
your
Rob
address
Hollis. I'm
and
the
your
owner of
address?
315 Rocky Shore Road.
Okay.
I don't have any letters of support, but I do have my neighbor, Ron. Ron is here. He's neighbor to my right-hand side. His brother is on the left-hand side of my property.
Could you give us his
Ron Breckbill?
full name and the address and?
What is your address?
It's Ron Breckville, 355 Rocky Shore Road.
Okay, thank you.
So Ron is just here to lend support and say that he's in favor of this as a neighbor.
Yes,
You-
good
You wanted to
afternoon.
say that yourself, Ron, didn't you?
I did.
Okay.
I've been waiting. I have it all prepared. No, I own the lot immediately to the west of Rob's lot and also 355. And I'm also the vice president of the Rocky Shore Road Association and in charge of the maintenance. So, you know, I'm very familiar with the property. And I, you know, certainly don't have any objection to his proposal. It certainly falls in line with another structure on my brother's property that is immediately next door in terms of setbacks and size. So I've also spoken, although I don't have any official correspondence from any of the other neighbors along the road. It has been talked about and there are no objections, and certainly from the road association, there are none either.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address this? Staying online, seeing none, then I will close the public portion of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And seeing none. Oh, Member Jarvis.
Why, thank you, Jerry, for recognizing me. I'm just seeking a little bit of clarification. I think planning, it says relief is being sought for the yard projection of the existing deck into the front yard. Is there not a, am I in the wrong application? That would probably solve that problem pretty quickly, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I apologize. No, I think I got the right one. This is 315 Rocky Shore Road. It says right in the background, the relief being sought is for the yard projection of the existing deck into the front yard. Under background, just before the zoning bylaw required and proposed. See, I did read this one.
You read too much.
Yeah. Oh. It says 315 Rocky Shore Road, right?
Yeah, the relief being sought is for the yard projection of the existing deck into the front yard. And that's the incorrect report. The report I have. It's not what that says.
Oh, just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
it's right there. It says right there.
Yeah, right there in the bottom.
Whoa.
Right there.
It was probably just a copy of it.
Just a transposition error, maybe from the.
I apologize, that should have come out.
Okay, just, okay.
I think I think we need to apologize to Member Jarvis.
He's not used to that, so
Line should not be there.
Okay, thank you. Further clarification then, you're saying what's for GFA, talking maximum floor area of 50 square meters. And proposed is 116, correct? So we're doubling. Not so much a big deal for me. I'm just curious why we need a garage that's twice as big as what's required.
So first of all, the size at which I'm requesting is the size which the rest of the neighbors have in the zoning. So I'm not asking for larger than what's in that regular zone. This is reduced because of the environmental setback. So I don't know why it's at that amount, but it's just, you can see there.
Is it like a 2-car garage versus a 1-car garage? Is that what we're looking at?
Correct.
It's a single level, correct?
Correct.
It's not like 3 stories high and got
No.
apartments above. I mean, that's, sorry, there's no diagram there, so I don't have anything to work with. And I was just curious about what the difference was.
Yeah.
Why the difference was required.
Just greater storage.
Yeah, surely it's not because you want to keep up with the neighbors. Okay.
I can't keep up with the neighbors.
Like Ron, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing. I did have an opportunity to get out there. You know, I think it's going to be discreetly stuck in the woods as I think Ron's neighbor to the other side. So I'm just curious, there's a bit of a rock edge or upcropping somewhere between the garage and the lake. Is the garage going to be quite close to that?
Yeah.
Right up against it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, because I couldn't, when I was there, I didn't see any pins, although Mr. Chair said that there were pins there, but maybe they had been removed, but. Did you? Eyesight then.
I and Chair Hill saw the stakes.
So perhaps it's my eyesight. And if you see my face on your motion camera, that was me checking out the property.
Yeah. It was the gray house that was, you were at the yellow one.
Was I on the side? Was I on the deck or what was I? Yes, the existing deck.
Okay, so we're clear on all that. Any other,
Tony
has a question or comment?
No, I just wanted to say I support this. I think it's gonna fit in there nice and tucked. And I also wanted to commend, that is probably the nicest road of any cottage association that I've been down so far. So well done.
Yeah.
If you're looking to take over another one, we'll give you some addresses.
Okay. So with that, I'll read the resolution, moved by Member Matthews, seconded by Member Schmidt. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A23-36 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 315 Rocky Shore Road to permit the construction of a detached garage subject to the provisions of zoning bylaw 2014-75. The above noted approvals are subject to the following conditions: that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. That this decision applies only to the proposed garage as of the date of this decision and as indicated on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. That the owner prepare and submit prior to the issuance of a building permit an erosion and sediment control plan to the sole satisfaction and approval of the township, and that said approval ESC plan be installed and maintained throughout the duration of any construction on the property. And finally, that this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you.
Our next application is A23-37 for 6 Island 1210. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. An application for a minor variance was received on July the 5th, 2023, as a result of a pre-application consultation, which was dated June 13th, 2023. It's the intent of the owner to construct a 43.74 square meter addition to the existing 77.45 square meter dwelling. The subject property is comprised of 0.84 hectares and is on an island property in Georgian Bay. Section 4.11 EI of the zoning bylaw will apply, and variances to numbers 1 and 2 are required in order to address the increase in the maximum GFA and width permitted as the existing dwelling is less than 10 meters at its closest point to the front lot line.
Thank you. Is the applicant present, and do they wish to? Oh, was there any correspondence on this application?
One letter of support was received from Bill and Joyce Sayers.
Thank you. And could you identify yourself?
Good morning again. Victoria Hoffman from Flow Drawings and Design, 3 Violet Drive, Port Severn. I do have a couple quick notes. So with this one, the GFA, it's that situation again, that it's a small cottage and the 25% just doesn't allow for that large of an expansion, right? So the existing dwelling is 833 square feet, and which is 25% is roughly that 200 square foot mark. So with this renovation in addition, what we've actually done is the main floor addition is actually only 208 square feet. What caught us was the use of the loft upstairs. So that's kind of what caught our GFA. And then in terms of the width, the shape of the property, and again, the dwelling is only roughly 22 feet wide. So it was like going to be 4.5 feet width increase, which working off an existing footprint, complicated roof lines and whatnot. And given the location of this addition kind of in that corner, it's a little bit more treed and secluded as well. This property has been in the family for, I think like over 100 years or something close to that. The applicant is online as well. And I think they're 6th generation. So myself, I'm here to answer any questions, and they might be as well. The timing might be a little bit off with their stuff. If they're still available, I don't know.
Okay, thank you very much. We're not seeing them on there. Do you have a name that we should do?
It was Janie Edwards.
Edwards? Okay.
I might have lied to her a little bit about the timing on that.
Okay. And the name Hayami is on the application.
Yeah, they're sisters.
Oh, okay. All right, then, is there any member of the public present that wishes to address this comment? Seeing none, I'll bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And again, Member Jarvis.
Thank you, Chair Hill. As members of the committee will be aware, I voiced some concern over the fact that this building is on the right on the high water mark. And so I'm going to go back to our planner. You indicate in the application, where are we here? That section the 4th point in your report highlights that such are required in order to address the increase in the maximum GFA and width permitted as the existing dwelling is less than 10 meters at its closest point to the front lot line. What constitutes the front lot line?
Through you, Mr. Chair. In this particular case, it's the high water mark.
Not only.
Sorry, not in this case. This case, it's the water's edge.
The water's edge.
Correct.
So.
Oh, shoot. What just happened?
We deal in the coastal Georgian Bay, everything we deal with is based on the high water mark. Setbacks are from the high water mark. And I think Victoria may even agree with me on that, but anyway, go ahead. I'm
Just a point of clarity, this survey is a little bit, this process has been ongoing for a bit, so it's a little bit older. There is also a setback from the dwelling to the high water mark, and it's actually like 0.2. I've got a very tiny version here, but
sorry, my computer just died as well.
yeah. So the dwelling setback is 0.2 meters at that.
Yeah, so I'm a cottager very close to this location. An adjoining cottage actually has part of the old hotel that was on our island, actually as part of that cottage. And in looking at the original request, I didn't think it was that serious a deal. And I agree with you, Victoria, considering the size of the original building, anything you put on there is going to be a major percentage increase. So I have no issue with that. My issue is with the fact that I know that in the fall of 2019, the water would literally have been lapping at the deck level of this cottage. And that to me is a huge issue. And I need to know if there can be something can be done. I mean, in my mind, I would think that we wouldn't be allowing anything unless there's some remedial action done with regards to moving the cottage, literally moving the cottage to a safer location. If we have a storm surge like we had in fall of 2019, per a photograph I circulated, unfortunately not to you, of another cottage that was basically a very similar situation. They had water on in their dining room floor. And that's what we're looking at here. If we have another high water occurrence, similar to what we had in the fall of 19 and through parts of 2020. I don't like the idea of allowing an addition to a building that we know is subject to flood threat in essence. And I think that if we as a municipality agree to any work being done on this place, is it not possible we are therefore liable for having allowed something like this to happen, knowing full well that at a high water situation, this building could be impacted significantly? I don't know if there's an answer to the question, but shoot away.
Can I just comment? Correct me if I'm wrong, planners, but I think like with doesn't the floor height have to hit a certain number? Like high water elevation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as well. Yeah, it's openings mainly, right? That's what we're dealing with is openings. And I'm sure Kaylee can comment further on that. It's openings that are relevant to any flood issues. I mean, as a committee, we can't put a condition on to do with anything sort of like building permit wise. So we couldn't put on, like flood proofing and things like that. However, I was mentioning it to Member Jarvis earlier this morning that if the committee doesn't feel comfortable approving something that in this kind of particular situation with the opportunity that flooding could occur to that extent, you do have the opportunity that you could ask for a coastal engineering study, which would provide that reassurance to the committee that what they're approving and where this addition is going will be fine. So that's almost security to the township to ask for a coastal engineering study if you feel it's necessary. But that's an option. I'm just putting it out as an option. I'm not recommending, I'm just putting out as an option.
Put that in as a friendly amendment if we could do that.
Can I add an extra comment? Just an extra comment. Maybe Deb could clarify again. Does the building, can we increase 1 meter or is it greater than 1 meter for this application? I think it's 1 meter because it's less than 10 meters from that. No, I mean height. Like I'm wondering if there's an opportunity because
if you're changing anything height wise, it would have to be recirculated. Is that what you're? Yeah.
Yep, never mind.
Excuse me, are we talking about just the height of the building itself off the ground?
Yeah. Within like, so if I'm only proposing like 0.8 meters higher.
I know,
so
but you're
I'm
still
allowing
putting, I mean, sorry, the front piles are still going to be in the lake if we have a situation like we had in 2019. And that's the implications of that are maybe nothing. Or if the ice set in during a high water occurrence, the ice could rip those things right out from underneath the cottage. I was very surprised with another cottage where that didn't happen. Because it's closer, it's more exposed, and I would have thought that maybe something was going to be taken out from underneath that other cottage, which is close by. So I think it's a very serious situation. I think we need to consider it. If a coastal engineering study can be facilitated here, I'd ask that be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. Member Matthews.
Thank you, and I appreciate Member Jarvis's comments and concerns. And I had a site visit there, and it is extremely close to the water. That said, Ms. McCabe indicated that this has been in the family 100 years. They're pretty aware of where the water level has been, might be, and the construction that you're applying for is at the back of the house, further away from the water. So I personally don't think a coastal engineering study for the size of the addition is fair on the applicant myself. That's,
Okay.
that's the battle of cognition.
Member Rivet.
Thank you. I'm familiar with islands like this, not this particular property, but I have seen some that did flood and they were completely underwater, septic beds gone, everything with the wash that comes in on Georgian Bay. My background is in insurance and claims, and there's so much out there now about, there's a Dr. Thistlethwaite from University of Waterloo. He talks about how municipalities have been burying their heads in the sand about the hazards of floodplain development. He talks how yesterday's permits could become tomorrow's litigation for municipalities who allow development in areas that they know are prone to flooding. The current owners might be okay. The next person comes in and says, what is all of this? Who knew it was going to flood? He goes on to talk about Dr. Thistlethwaite and his colleagues. They canvassed the public, and they found that 64% of respondents thought government should compensate property owners for flood damages if they're allowed to build in high-risk areas. So declared the land safe for development and can be held liable. So I look at this and think, sometimes those buildings, I know they've been there for 100 years, and with climate change and water levels, sometimes they need to go away. I mean, they just should happen. They have to, at some point they're going to have to be gone. We see it everywhere. I have a hard time just blessing this and approving it, thinking that it's safe forever. I wouldn't want someone to go back to the municipality and say, you look where the water is. It's lapping at the shore right now. That's on a good dry day in August. Come the fall, are we just putting more risk? Are we allowing them to risk more? I struggle with that, knowing that the municipality could be held liable, perhaps this owner, their family, or the next owner, because it does come back. Municipalities are brought back into matters that are 30 years old and still held liable if it's deemed an undiscovered hazard. So there's considerable risk there, and I really struggle allowing more development on a situation like this. I think it's very risky.
Do you have a comment, Ms. Hoffman?
Yeah, I totally respect and understand what you guys are saying. My concern is as a designer here, I try to basically, when people come to me with their proposals, I pretend I'm gonna propose what you guys are gonna say, basically. And the alternative is, so if this isn't a good, and also this has been proposed as a renovation and an addition, right? It's not a rebuild. So if this isn't a good location, are we saying that they're, stuck with that size, or would you be more keen, like the location of this cottage is in like a nice little like lowered area, which is why this is a concern. But then, there's not a lot of area on this island to meet the setbacks anyway. So then, obviously budgets and everything like that as well. You're going to pop a cottage up on a big rock if they have it, if they have the budget for that, which I'm not saying that this is the goal at all. I'm just highlighting comments. And I think that's a very different scope, you know what I mean? Or are we deeming the property like undevelopable? You know what I mean? So that's just a little comment. I totally respect and appreciate that, but I do also, understand where my clients are coming from.
I think so. We're introducing a new requirement here, and I think if the township feels that there is some exposure to liability from flooding, then they ought to make that a part of the review process for the planning department. I don't think it's appropriate for the committee of adjustment to enter into that sort of a reevaluation of this application based on what we think ought to be an amendment made to the township zoning bylaw. So with that in mind, if there are no further questions, I will
It's just your indulgence for just a moment. I know there's a provincial policy statement.
Talks about protecting the safety and physical and risk of nature.
We're trying to figure out where in here
Back up.
Oh.
Back up.
And,
Here. Okay,
yeah.
yeah,
I
I just want to refer, yeah.
So the
okay.
second paragraph under the provincial policy statement, Deb, states, section 3 promotes protection of public health and safety to reduce potential risks from natural or human-made hazards. And really, I think we've got to address that specifically because we are looking at basically a potential risk to natural hazard created by man-made, structure in place. So I like the idea. If I don't know if the committee would be okay with the coastal engineering study. I don't know if that'll work. I know that becomes a financial impact on the cottage owner. This is a modest dwelling. I agree with that 100%. And I mean, one alternative, obviously, we physically move that building up and away from the high water mark. There's not a lot of room to do that, on that piece of property, as we saw. But you can mitigate the potential hazard that currently stands with where it is now.
I understand where you're going with this, and I'm just wondering that, we're looking here for approval of this fairly minor addition in the building. If in fact there was a concern by the township on the liability as a result of flooding, and I'm asking this of our township people that are here, would that not be part of the building permit approval process?
Good question. Really?
Yes.
But not our building department. No.
Normally, when permits are issued, obviously, it's something that has to meet the requirement of the zoning bylaw. Now, calling that a floodplain might be kind of treading on a different ground just because the water goes up and down I wouldn't think necessarily mean it's a floodplain. So that I think would be something we'd have to look into further. Nothing like, we've issued permits on structures close to the water as long as I've been here. And luckily, nothing's ever happened and we haven't been sued, knock on wood. But everybody knows your municipality get named and everything anyways, but yeah.
I can confirm there is no floodplain mapping for this
Right.
particular area, unfortunately.
However, we do acknowledge a high water mark, and that cottage
That's
is right on.
correct.
And for purposes of any kind of argument, somebody would, I'm sure, you could favorably compare our high water mark to a floodplain indicator. And I really think we've got to consider this. Again, I sympathize with the cottage owner that they got this. I think they got it well before that high water mark of 2019-20 that none of us anticipated. For a fact, I thought we built our dock at the high water mark only to have it 8 inches underwater. So yeah, these things are happening, but climate change is going to make it easier. And I think we have to be very cognizant that, okay, maybe the water levels won't go up. Maybe we're dealing with water levels that are going to go down. I don't know. We don't know. But if we have another high water event, is it going to be worse or not as bad as the last one we had? And I think we've got to acknowledge we have these. The water in the Georgian Bay goes up and it goes down. Can we not please attempt to mitigate the threat to this cottage owner and ourselves with the possibility of another high water occurrence?
Member Predko.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I appreciate the concerns raised by members Jarvis and Rivet. But I think we're in a situation where we're looking at a minor addition, not minor financially to them, I know that, but a small addition to their property. If we deny their minor variance application, we haven't done anything to help mitigate their cottage anyway. Their cottage is still next to the waterfront.
Because if their cottage, as it's been renovated, is now worth a whole heck of a lot more, and they're destroying all that investment with allowing it to go, for us allowing it to go ahead. That's my issue.
But my issue is if we don't approve it, we haven't accomplished anything either. you know, I think you're raising a valid point, but I think it's larger issue than the cottage that we're dealing with today, and that's.
Okay, if I may, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate that back and forth. I think we're all aware of what the impact was of the high water in 2019. The water level did exceed the high water mark in our area. There's been 4 years since then, and that we haven't had any changes in policy from the provincial government that I'm aware of. And I certainly don't think that this is the time or place to put that onus on a 100-year-old cottage that's out there, that they should have to deal with the climate change and high water area.
Just one more quick note through your chair, if you don't mind. If they came in for a permit to renovate it, it would have to be issued. Because it's an existing building, there'd be no zoning implications. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, we're putting a restriction in place that doesn't currently exist. So, I don't think we're in a position that we want to change the laws to affect this particular, or we are not in a position to change the law. So we'll move forward. And Victoria, do you have
the owner is present. She just can't speak. I don't know if she's got something to share, though. I was coming to my watch.
Are you able to speak with her or speak on her behalf?
I think the same concerns were kind of being addressed, right? Like, working off the original footprint and acknowledging that this is like a renovation addition. If we didn't need a minor variance, we wouldn't be here. So if we had done that 208 square foot without the loft and we just kept the same square footage, I mean, we would be allowed to, with the building department, renovate the structure. I mean, the whole idea was we didn't want to build a new building, really is what,
Okay.
it was the idea was to keep it, so.
We got that. And
because of working with the planning
I
department.
would like to move on unless you have something that is going to change your perspective. Excellent. Then.
So Greg asked me to maybe just say a quick word about subsection 3.1.1A of the provincial policy statement that was referred to by one of the members. It speaks to the development of land along the Great Lakes St. Lawrence system, and it does talk about various flooding and other hazards. The provincial policy statement was amended a few years ago, but at the same time, the province withdrew the previously existing Ministry of Natural Resources support information for the PPS in that regard. In other parts of the province south of us where the conservation authorities exist, it was put under the Conservation Authorities Act and their regulations, and the conservation authorities have provided detailed mapping. In our case, the District Municipality of Muskoka is currently working with Hatch as its consultant to provide that kind of mapping. And if you go on GeoHub, you will see on occasion in our township, there is mapping along Georgian Bay. There's also mapping along inland lakes like 6 Mile Lake. There's a lot of missing information. At this point in time, the information that Deb gave you is 100% correct. If the committee is concerned that their decision be consistent with the PPS in this respect, that their option would be to require the coastal engineering report.
Point of clarification with regards to the application itself. If it was, if they were not enlarging this, or they were enlarging it within the guidelines of our zoning bylaws, the comment was made that we would not be seeing this application. Isn't this building, isn't it legal non-complying at this stage? Would that not still require that it come before us?
Up to the 25% or the.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for all those comments. I have a resolution that is moved by member Predko, seconded by member Matthews, Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A 23-37 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 6 Island 1210 to permit the construction of an addition to an existing dwelling subject to the provisions of zoning bylaw 2014-75. The above noted approvals are subject to the following conditions: that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from
Mr. Chairman, committee members, everyone in attendance, both here and online, thank you very much. My name is Jeff Kratke. I am a registered professional planner employed full-time by the Township of Georgian Bay. The application before you, subject lands are located on 6 Mile Lake, as you can see on the screen, and have a municipal address 1268 Island 360 6 Mile Lake. Unfortunately, due to my error, there is a bit of a change that I don't consider material. It's a 10-centimeter increase in the height that I'm going to read correctly into the record with this presentation. And certainly the draft decision has been prepared to reflect it. The purpose of the application is to vary the zoning bylaw subsections 411E11 and 411E4, increasing the gross floor area, or GFA, by 56.74% instead of 25%, to a total of 157.27 square meters instead of 95 square meters. And subsection 411E13, increasing the height of a legally existing shoreline residential dwelling from 3.68 meters to 5.41 meters for a total of 1.73 meters. The effect of the application allows the expansion of a legal non-conforming shoreline dwelling less than the maximum 275 square meters GFA if the front yard complied with the minimum front yard, and where the expansion has a 2-to-12 sloped roof up, that is a monoslope roof, while the midpoint of the same height peaked roof expanded over the existing shoreline residential dwelling would comply. Given the correction to the drawing, I'm also just going to show you on the screen the other correct drawings. There is no other change other than the correction in height. However, these corrected drawings would be attached to any decision of the committee. Well, not quite. Once I gave you a chance to look at the correct drawings, I was going to continue to say that this is an application again under subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act, which recognizes the legal non-conforming rights of the building and the owner of that building and land. And in my opinion, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement because, as you can see in my report, it is outside of the flood hazard identified by Hatch for the District of Muskoka regarding the provincial policy statement. It is also, in my opinion, appropriate development under the 2 tests under subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act, and therefore I recommend its approval. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
One letter of support was received from Sharon Hopkirk.
Yeah. Victoria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Victoria Hoffman, Flow Drawings and Designing, 3 Violet Drive. The property owner, Glenn Grainger, is also beside me. I don't really have a lot to add. Thank you for updating the drawings. You know, the GFA, Again, it's the 25% that we're working with. The proposal is intended to go off like the side rear of the existing dwelling. And with the height, this was a new one for me because of we've been doing the single sloped roof styles I've been doing this for 6 or 7 years now. And that hadn't come up before, whereas in this situation, we're taking the top of that single slope opposed to the midpoint. If it were, so when we originally had designed this, the midpoint would have complied, but because we're taking the top, that's how we got into it with the height. And I don't know if Glenn has anything to add, or we're just both here to answer questions.
Okay,
Sorry, Glenn Grainger. Yeah, just any questions you might have, I'd be happy to answer.
okay, thank you very much. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment? Seeing none, I'll bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. Seeing none, except for Mr. Jarvis. I gotta be faster, I guess.
He just puts his hand.
Yeah, he doesn't matter, yeah.
I was taking notes earlier. Come on, give me a break. The legal non-complying, I'm sure I probably just missed it. What is the legal non-complying issue with this building? It's too far into the front yard?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay, thank you. The original cottage was built probably how long ago?
I'm going to guess and say about 1965.
And the front deck that's currently on it is obviously new.
Constructed in 2015 with a permit.
Yeah, so and so would that have required a variance at that time because that's more into the front yard setback?
I believe there was an existing deck there. It was not elongated toward the shore, but back from the shore. So it was just the length that was added.
Oh, okay. So again, on the footprint of a previous existing, okay.
Yeah, no variance was required.
Okay. And one of my common questions these days is, just looking at the GFA, if this were a new build and compliant from the standpoint of setbacks, what size building would be allowed on that property? Up to what size?
Up to 275 square meters.
Yes, I thought. Okay. That's all I needed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just I'd like to offer sort of an apology to Graingers that you've been sitting there all day and you had to be waiting till the very end. But,
Actually found the process quite interesting.
well,
Kind of enjoyed it.
apply next time for committee of adjustment. Yes, we're sorry to keep you, but
All good, all good. Yeah. Yeah, like I say, kind of enjoyed the whole process. It's kind of nice.
Yeah. If you come a little earlier,
sorry,
if you come a bit earlier, we have donuts.
That would top it right off.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, read the resolution, moved by Member Jarvis, seconded by Member Matthews. Be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Georgian Bay hereby approves minor variance application A23-38 regarding a legally existing shoreline residential dwelling. The subject lands admittedly known as 1268 Island 360 6 Mile Lake. Assessment roll number for the purpose of varying subsections 4.11 EI 1 and 2 and 411 E4 of the zoning bylaw, therefore increasing the gross floor area by 56.74% instead of 25% to a total of 157.27 square meters instead of 95 square meters, and increasing the height from 3.68 meters to 5.47 meters for a total of 1.73 meters, subject to conditions being that the owners provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from the Township Financial Service indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the subject lands, and that this decision applies only to the proposed development shown on attachments 1 to 4 of the Development Services Report regarding A23-38 application being complete within 3 years from the date of the decision. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you.
Welcome to stay.
Thanks very much.
Uh,
We could get you an office here.
It's done. Our next application is A 23-39 for 129 Joseph Street. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A minor variance application was received by the township on July 7th, 2023, following consultation with municipal staff. The current owner of the property acquired the lands in December 2019 from her parents. At the present time, there is an existing 267 square meter dwelling constructed in 1974. The owner is proposing 151.62 square meter attached garage with a living area on the second floor, extending the existing roof line to match the current dwelling height. The proposal will require a minor variance for a reduction in the minimum exterior side yard setback to Joseph Street. The traveled portion of Joseph Street is approximately 12.8 meters or 42 feet from the subject property line, providing a treed buffer between the road and the lot.
Then that's your conclusion. Thank you. Has there been any correspondence in this application?
No correspondence was received.
Is the applicant present online or
The applicant is online.
is if the applicant is there, could you please identify yourself and provide any comments to the committee?
Yes, I'm the applicant. My name is Ellen Biasucci, and can you all hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I'm not sure I know how to turn the video on here. Anyways, is it okay if I just speak?
Certainly, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I think I've got video there. Now you
There-
can see me.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, as I said, my name is Ellen Biasucci. I grew up in MacTier, but after 50 years out west, I purchased my parents' home, which was built by them in the 70s. And constructing an attached garage is primarily at a conceptual stage right now. And to progress things properly, I consulted twice with Deb McCabe to get her guidance before I have submitted my application. And, you know, I think that was respectful of the process and this committee. And it was an appropriate first step. Deb's done a really good job of presenting my request for a variance on the external side yard setback. But if you have any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are any members of the public available online, okay, then I'll bring the matter before the Committee of Adjustment for any questions or comments. And we have Member Rivet.
Yes, thank you. I'm familiar with the area and the roadway, and it has been in existence for a long time. And I think to the addition that the applicant is proposing will be well received, and it will definitely be a net gain for the property and for the neighborhood, and I would support it fully.
Okay, thank you very much. And Member Predko.
Yep, just one point of clarification. This house is on the corner lot and the proposed garage is on the side next to the side road. So there's no next door neighbor. It's just going to be fronting the side. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no further questions or comments, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Member Matthews, seconded by Member Rivet, be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A 23-39 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 129 Joseph Street, MacTier, to permit the construction of an attached garage with living quarters on the second floor to the existing dwelling, subject to provisions of zoning bylaw 2014-75. The above noted approval is subject to the following conditions: that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. That this decision applies only to the proposed detached garage, and as of the date of decision as indicated on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision, any other variances that may appear on the schedule that are not listed in the written description are not authorized. And that this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our final application today is A 23-43 for 2585 Honey Harbor Road. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. An application for a minor variance was received by the township on July 31st, 2023. As a result of consultation with township staff, the owner had submitted for a building permit after working with the CBO on what would be required in order to obtain building permits for the proposed development. An order to comply was issued as it was determined that the construction proposed in the building permit application had been completed without the benefit of a building permit being issued. The owner has lifted the cottage and added a new open deck and 2 covered decks without the benefit of a building permit. The covered porch that is on the water side of the existing cottage is closer to the high water mark than the existing decks and porches. Variances are required for the expansion encroaching further into the front yard, an increase in the maximum front yard projection for the deck, the minimum interior side yard setback, and an increase in the maximum lot coverage. A stop work order is on the property until such time as the planning application has been dealt with.
Thank you. Has there been any correspondence on this application?
No correspondence was received.
And do we have the applicant online?
Both the applicant and agent are present.
Okay. If the applicant is present and wish to add anything to the planner's comments, please go ahead. After identifying yourself, of course.
Hi, I'm Matt Reed from Sketch Design Build out of Barrie. I was helping the owner Anthony with his drawings for the addition that he's planned here. And yeah, thanks Deb for the introduction there. We have 4 variances we've applied for. A lot of them are a result of existing conditions. And I think they all line up quite well for minor variance. So interested to hear everyone's comments.
Okay, and the owner, Mr. Mintz, is do you have anything to add to what's been given so far?
Yeah, so
I'm sorry, we're having a little problem with your audio.
not yet. Can you hear me now?
This is much better, yes.
Okay, sorry. Yes, no, just open to answering any questions.
Okay, are you on site in Honey Harbor Road or somewhere else?
I am, yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh. Is there any other member of the public who wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And Mr. Jarvis.
Okay, so there is a shore road allowance. Does the property owner own the shore road allowance?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, he does.
Yes, okay. And one other question for the owner, Mr. Mitz. I've been on site. Actually, I think there's significant improvement over what was there. I think you're doing a nice job. I think I talked to is it your dad that's doing the work on the place?
My father-in-law, he's kind of my little caretaker here.
Okay, yeah, I did talk to him. And my question
since I purchased the place, it's kind of been nice. He's been up here loving it. And then my mother-in-law actually became kind of a member of the town here. She worked at the liquor store all summer too. So it's been good.
Okay, my curiosity has to do with the basement you've put on the lower level. Do you have an issue, or has there been an issue with or do you perceive any issue with the higher water?
No, No, I've been here since the end of April, and we've had some pretty significant rains and all that stuff, and there's nothing in the basement whatsoever. My sump doesn't even come on, believe it or not.
Okay, so the high water mark is noted on your survey.
Correct, yep.
Any idea how that would relate to where your basement, the level to which your basement has been dug?
Yeah, no, it literally when we dug the footings and all that stuff in, there was very little water that came in there. And with the high water level, the way it comes in, it's still a gradual slope up to the elevation of the basement.
Okay, so the basement floor is effectively above the high water mark is what you're saying?
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
That was my concern. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Member Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's more to our CBO. Are you satisfied with the construction that has happened there, that it meets code other than he didn't get a permit?
Through worship, just so you know, we haven't done any inspections on it yet. We attended site, stop the construction is what we do. And now we wait for the process to effectually end.
And so for my own knowledge, then if it's not, do you put another stop work order?
Yes, it'll be made to meet building code if it does not. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Schmidt, please.
I just want to say I think somebody maybe got their hands slapped just a little bit, but it's certainly based on my site visit that there's definitely a net improvement to the property and to the area with the work that's been completed, and look forward to the building department bringing it through to fruition.
Okay, I just have a quick question for Mr. Mintz. I've been by there several times during the process that you've gone through, and I was there as they were raising the building, and it appeared to me like the floor of that basement had already been poured, and all the utilities in that were in the. Did somebody just pour that floor and you didn't have enough height? It looked like it was less than 5 feet.
It's strange because when we first looked at this place, there was actually somebody living in the basement, but it was only like
short person, I think.
Yeah, but it was head height. So I'm like, you know what? In order to get some good storage and me not whacking my head downstairs all the time, it's like just kind of made sense. But yeah, there was a full couch, living room, fridge, everything was down there when we looked at it.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, and it was interesting. Now, did you raise that yourself, or was that a contractor that did that?
No, I had Cooper Construction out of Coldwater do it, so it was a contractor that did it.
Yeah, they pretty slick.
Oh, yeah, it was. That's all they
Thank
do.
you. That's very helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a trick question, I guess. But yeah, it looks great. You did a super job there. The place looks really nice and looks good from the water. That bit of timber frame that you did on the front adds a lot of character to it.
Yeah, Matt's done a good job with that, and we're also working on lot number 7 on Royal Island. So he's done all the drawings and everything. So the same timber frame guys that did this, they're doing the island project too. So it'll be in another month from now. If you're out in the boat and driving by it, come and have a look see at Royal Island. It's going to be spectacular.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear which island it was.
Royal Island. Yeah.
Wow.
Right across the original Delawana.
Yeah, is that your construction that's going on there now?
Yeah, we're on lot 7. We own lot 7 and lot 5. So I guess the trusses are pretty much up right now. So we'll be closed in by the end of September.
Okay, that looks great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, I will read the resolution. Moved by Member Schmidt, seconded by Member Matthews. Be it resolved that Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A23-43 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 2585 Honey Harbor Road to prevent the raising of the existing dwelling to provide additional habitable space, as well as the addition of a new open deck and new covered deck, subject to the provisions of zoning bylaw 2014-75. The above noted approval is subject to the following conditions. that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision, and that this decision applies only to the raising of the existing cottage to provide for additional habitable space and the addition of a new open deck and new closed deck as of the date of this decision as indicated in Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. And that the owner restores a minimum of 14.17 square meters of land within 15 meters of the water's edge to a natural state by planting native trees and shrubs no later than September 15, 2024, for which the locations and species of native vegetation are to be determined by a landscape plan prepared by the owner and provided to the township. And that this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for this development. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion carried and the application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and good luck, Mr. Mintz. I have a further resolution dated today's date and moved by member Rivet, seconded by member Jarvis. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment does now adjourn at 1:45 p.m. until October 13, 2023 at 10 a.m. or the call of the chair. All those in favor, please indicate. Oh, yeah, sorry, Mr. Jarvis. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, Mr. Preto, you wish to continue, Mr. Preto? Okay, the motion is